acknowledge the presence in the Speaker's Gallery this afternoon a visiting delegation from the County Assembly of Busia. The delegation comprises of staff from the Sergeant-at-Arms Department who are in the Senate on a full-day benchmarking visit with the counterpart department in the Senate. Honorable Senators, I request each member of the delegation to stand when called out so that you may be acknowledged in the Senate tradition. 1, Mr. Christopher Abele Siandanya is the Chief Sergeant-at-Arms. Thank you. 2, Mr. Grison Wanyama Kayone, a Commissioner. Mr. Wilberforce Wanyama. Mr. William Nzai. Mr. Wilberforce Obola. Mr. Onesimus Michael Eroni. Mr. Shadrach Felix Okenda. On behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, I extend a warm welcome to them and wish you a fruitful visit in the Senate. I will allow the Majority Leader to say a word of welcome and thereafter proceed to lay the papers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, a word of welcome to the visiting delegation from Busia County Assembly. I hope they get to interact very well with our Sergeant-at-Arms Department and any other department that they may find relevant to their study as they visit our house, Mr. Speaker. I hope they get and make the best use of their time with us here, learn from the best. Like I've said many times before, and I speak from a position of authority, Mr. Speaker, that you will struggle to find the kind of competence that we have in the Parliament of Kenya. So take advantage. Their visit, Mr. Speaker, wouldn't have come, though, at a sad time in terms of our interactions with the people of Busia, when we are mourning the demise of one of their sons of Busia, our colleague and member of staff, one Mr. Wellington Namenge. As they travel back home, let them take back a message of condolence from us as a Senate, knowing that this gentleman served us with tremendous courage and zeal as a Senate, actually, Mr. Speaker, and Parliament generally. So most welcome to the team from Busia. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, I beg now to move to the next business. I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the Senate today, 15th of February, 2023. Number 1, the 2023 Budget Policy Statement. 2, the Draft Division of Revenue Bill. 3, the Draft County Allocation of Revenue Bill 2023. 4, the Draft County Additional Allocation Bill 2023. 5, the Medium-Term Debt Management Strategy. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay another set. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of Senate today, 15th February 2023. The East African the East African Legislative Assembly Annual Legislative Calendar for financial year 2022-2023, January to June. The budget 2, the Budget Review Outlook Paper for financial year 23-24 and medium-term budget. 3, the Commission on Revenue Allocation Recommendation on the County Government's Recurrent Expenditure Budget Ceiling for County Assemblies and County Executive for financial year 2023-2024. 4, the Commission on Revenue Allocation Recommendation on the basis of equitable sharing of revenue between the national and county governments for the financial year 2023 and 2024. 5, the report of the Controller of Budget on county government budget implementation review for the first quarter of the financial year 2022-2023. 6, the report of the Controller of Budget on the annual county government's budget implementation review for the financial year of 2021-2022. 7, report of the Controller of Budget on the national government budget implementation review for the first quarter of the financial year 2022 and 2023. 8, the report of the Controller of Budget on the annual national government budget implementation review for financial year 2021-2022. 9, the biannual report of the Commission on the Administrative of Justice, CAJ, for the period January to June 2022. 10, report of the Commission on Administrative Justice, Election Monitoring and Observation, 2022. 11, the annual corporate report of the Auditor General for financial year 2021-2022. 12, the report of the Public Service Commission on the status of compliance of the values and principle in the articles of Chapter 10 and 232 of the Constitution for the financial year 2021-2022. 13, report of the Auditor General on the Kakamega County Small Scale Development Fund for the year ended 30th June 2022. 14, the Senate calendar for the second session of the 13th Parliament. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay. Thank you.
Honorable Senators, as you may have noted, the Senate Majority Leader has tabled the budget policy statement for the financial year 2023-2024, the medium-term date management strategy 2023, the draft division of revenue bill 2023, and the draft county allocation of revenue bill 2023. Section 25 of the Public Finance Management Act and Standing Order 180 of the Senate requires the National Treasury to prepare and submit the budget policy statement to Parliament by 15th of February each year. Honorable Senators, the budget policy statement is an important financial instrument as it sets out the broad strategic priorities and policy goals that will guide the national government and the county governments in preparing their budgets, both for the following financial year and over the medium term. It contains, among other things, 1, an assessment of the current state of the economy and the financial outlook over the medium term, including the macroeconomic focus. 2, the financial outlook with respect to government revenues, expenditures and borrowing for the next financial year and over the medium term. 3, the proposed expenditure limits for the national government, including those of Parliament and the judiciary, and indicative transfers to the county governments. And 4, the fiscal responsibility principles and financial objectives over the medium term, including limits on total annual debt. And lastly, the proposed division of revenue, including proposed additional allocations, if any. In a nutshell, it means that any proposal the senators have regarding the budget policy statement, division of revenue bill, and the county allocation of revenue bill, including funds for additional allocations to the counties, the financing structure thereof, among other recommendations, should be canvassed and forwarded to the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury for consideration when finalizing the budget for the relevant financial year. This is a requirement pursuant to Section 25(8) of the Public Finance Management Act and Standing Order 186(9) of the Senate. Honorable Senators, Section 25(7) of the Public Finance Management Act provides as follows. Parliament shall, not later than 14 days after the budget policy statement is submitted to Parliament, table and discuss a report containing its recommendations and pass the resolutions to adopt it with or without amendments. Further, Standing Order 186(4) states that upon being laid before the Senate, the budget policy statement shall be committed to each standing committee to consider and submit its recommendations to the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget within 7 days. Pursuant to Standing Order 186(5), the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget shall within 12 days, following the tabling of the budget policy statement, consider the budget policy statement and the recommendations received under paragraph 4 and table a report for consideration in accordance with Section 25(7) of the Public Finance Management Act. Appreciating the importance of the budget policy statement and the above timelines, I direct that the budget policy policy statement be considered by all standing committees, each concentrating on its mandate, highlighting any policy and financial recommendations thereof. These recommendations must be forwarded to the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on or before Wednesday, 22nd February 2023. In order to assist the standing committees to unpackage the contents of the budget policy statement, the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget has organized a breakfast meeting for all senators on Tuesday, 21st February 2023 at 7:30 a.m. in the Senate chamber. The Standing Committee on Finance and Budget will be required to consider the recommendation from the other standing committees, as well as consult the institutions referred to under Standing Order 186-6 in finalizing its report on the budget policy statement. The Standing Committee will be required to table its report on or before 28th February 2023. For the avoidance of doubt, the above processes must be carried out within the 12 days window for consideration of the budget policy statement. Honorable Senators, in conclusion, I urge you all to prioritize the scrutiny of the budget policy statement, taking into consideration our most important function of safeguarding devolution. I thank you, Honorable Senators. Next order. What is the point of order, Senator Mazayo?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, yesterday I communicated with your office with regards to the removal of the changes that we did in the office of the leadership of the minority party. Mr. Speaker, I'm referring to our standing orders number 23, and in particular number 5, 23, 5, and 6. With your kind permission, if you will allow me, let me read it. Basically, it talks on the Senate Minority Leader, Deputy Senate Minority Leader, Senate Minority Whip, and the Deputy Senate Minority Whip. When we come to number 5, it said that the removal of a senator from an office under paragraph 3 shall not take effect until a senator is elected in a manner provided for under paragraph 1. And therefore, coming to number 6, it says, upon a decision being made by the minority party under this standing order, the decision of the party shall be communicated to the Speaker, which I did in writing, together with the minutes of the meeting at which the decision was made, which I did. Number 1, in the case of the removal of the Senate Minority Leader or the Deputy Minority Leader by the Senate Minority Whip. In the case of the removal of the Senate Minority Whip or the Deputy Senate Minority Whip by the Senate Majority Leader. Mr. Speaker, with a lot of respect, there is a precedent we set in this Senate, and it was implemented. Because the Speaker then realized that we had followed the correct process, and there was no complaint, and it was the changes were affected. Mr. Speaker, I find it a bit strange that as the leader of the minority party, despite the fact that I wrote to you a letter in writing and enclosed the minutes of the Azimio party, which is the minority in this house, you have decided not to effect the letter or to communicate to the House. And therefore, if you don't communicate to the House right now, this House is missing the minority whip. This House is missing the deputy minority whip. Now I'm left alone here on the opposite, on the minority side, without my other leaders with me. It portrays very badly on the side of the speakership. If you will not be in a position to make communications as provided for under our own standing orders.
I have been very quiet, keenly following your argument, and I want to pick your point of order, and I'm not getting. What is your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, sir, I was waiting for the communication. And because it was not forthcoming, the only way I would ask for an avenue, as a leader in this House, which I think I am entitled, that I need a proper explanation as to why the minority side is not having its leadership in place. As per the letter I wrote to you, and as required by our standing orders, to communicate to the House.
Very well,
Thank you.
What is your point of order, Majority Leader?
Mr. Speaker, I have no business whatsoever in what happens in the leadership of the minority side. But I have interest, Mr. Speaker, in the procedures of this House, because we are leaders and we respect the rule of law. I hear the submissions my brother is making before you, but I'd wish to caution you, Mr. Speaker, that there has been history in this House. There is history where when one side of a House had the kind of challenges that the minority side is currently experiencing, one side of the factions that for whatever reason were wrangling presented before the then Speaker minutes of a purported parliamentary group meeting, as is expected of standing orders then before the procedure provided right now. Later on, Mr. Speaker, and this is just good history because history is good reference material, especially for a man who's in your place and you're expected to make a decision in the best interest of this House. Minutes later, Mr. Speaker, the side which I belonged to in our coalition then, and we were properly the majority, Mr. Speaker, we presented also our minutes of our parliamentary group meeting then. Unfortunately, the Speaker then, for whatever reason, decided to do what my brother Senator Mazayo is inviting you to do. Hurry the process, don't consider any submissions that have been made before you, did a communication in the midst, actually. It was the most absurd day in this House. In the midst of a debate that was ongoing, the Speaker walks in, relieves the person who was on the chair, and goes ahead to make a communication. It became a stain on the fabric of Senate as an institution, something that we regret up to date, Mr. Speaker. Because after that, there were court battles, there were debates. In fact, the Speaker found himself in such an awkward situation that later when they were challenged that afternoon and asked to expound, they said that they will give a reasoned ruling. It's now 3 years after that. That communication has never come from that chair, Mr. Speaker. Why am I saying this? I say this, Mr. Speaker, to warn you against any rash decision in terms of change of leadership, either from majority or minority side. If the leader of minority, as is expected in his right, has written to you, I want to believe that it is within your powers, Mr. Speaker, to make a determination in whatever way that you are in. I would never have had interest in this matter. The only time I got concerned is when the leader of minority said that I communicated to you and I expect you to make a ruling right now. I got concerned a bit because we have been there before. It's within their right, Mr. Speaker, but the dignity of this House rests in your hand. I rest my case, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Ledama, what is your point of order?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I consider this House the House of Union, the House of Reason, and with humility, I rise to try and persuade us that this House is guided by nothing but these standing orders. Mr. Speaker, the minority side, with all its definitions which are prescribed in the standing orders, if you go to standing orders number 2, which define what a parliamentary party is, and I'll read it with your permission, Mr. Speaker. It says a parliamentary party means a party or a coalition of parties consisting of not less than 10 senators. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to beseech you to consider the communication that you received from the minority leader following the standing orders, standing order number 23, and particularly standing order number 23.6, where it says, and I will repeat, it says, upon a decision being made by a minority party under the standing order, a decision of the party shall be communicated to the Speaker in writing, together with minutes of the meeting at which the decision was made. And in this case, the decision was affecting the minority whip. And the standing orders provide for a procedure to be followed. It says that in case of a removal of a Senate minority whip or a deputy Senate minority whip by the Senate minority leader. Mr. Speaker, my colleague, the minority leader, has communicated, and sometimes communication is something which is a privilege that some of us are all given. We have different ways of communicating. We are just coming back from a PG with our party leader, and the same information has been communicated. Mr. Speaker, I know you sit there, and sometimes you don't see. You know, a very good point in case was yesterday, when you could not be able to see what was going on until it was pointed out by some of us. So today, Mr. Speaker, the minority side has communicated to you. It will be prudent for you to communicate to us, because the minority leader has advised us, and whose advice we believe to be true, that yesterday at the House business, he submitted the communication. And he had actually even pleaded with the majority side to allow, to hold their changes that I think have taken effect already or will be taking effect today, to a point when the minority side will also be submitting their changes. So when we came back and we approached the chair to try to find out whether the communication was done, we realized that it has not been done. So I want to request you, Mr. Speaker, to take into effect the communication given by the minority side as per the standing order. And if you want us to give you time, it will be you, Mr. Speaker, because you're the one who sits in that desk, we sit on this side, to advise us on when we can expect the communication, so that when we go back to our PG, we can be able then to be able to communicate. I do not have a problem with my colleagues from the other side of the aisle weighing into this matter. The history given by my colleague is important. But I think that history also guided the amendments of these standing orders. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to rest my case there and request that you consider the argument made by my brother, the minority leader, to effect the changes as per the wishes of the minority party. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Abdul, what is your point of order?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I will not purport to know what the standing order dictates in this particular moment. But I would just like to take this opportunity to talk to the colleagues on my side. That as far as I'm concerned, in my personal opinion, this is a rash decision. Can I finish?
Can the senator be
Can I be protected, Speaker?
Honorable senators, we spent time yesterday reminding ourselves about the standing orders. And we agreed going forward, we're going to walk the straight and narrow. If you're not going to respect the standing orders, I'm afraid I'd rather preside over an empty chamber, but not preside on a market. May the senator be heard in silence. Senator Sifuna, Senator Haji is on a point of order.
The same point of order.
Senator Sifuna is the chair to be concerned about his point of order. It is not your concern. It is the chair to wonder what the point of order is. I'm the presiding officer here. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your protection. Mr. Speaker, I stated earlier that I think, and I said very clearly, I'm talking to my colleagues, and I think this is a rash decision because the way it is portrayed out there and what you're getting from the media is what you're basing your decision on. And as colleagues in the same coalition, I would feel that yourselves as leaders, if you got the wind that there's a problem on the side of Jubilee, that the best thing is to reach out to Jubilee and find out why are the members of Jubilee disgruntled about being in the Azimio coalition. But what you've simply done is to jump into conclusion, get time to punish individual members. Mr. Speaker, sir, just a few months ago, we had an issue, a similar issue in this House. And it is the very same Secretary General of DM, Senator Sifuna, who kept reminding me, says we are leaders and we should not take direction from the principles. Yet now, it seems like the very same members are taking direction from people outside of this House to make decisions and to chart the way for the members of the coalition. It seems like certain members are itching for certain positions of leadership in this House. The right thing was to wait and see if the threat made by a certain member of the Jubilee to exit the coalition, wait for that time and then make your move on the individuals or the positions that you want to take. At this moment, I would urge the minority leader and the deputy whip, this is not the time to go against your colleagues in the leadership without getting the substance of the problem that we are having in the coalition. And just to mention, Mr. Speaker, immediately members of Jubilee went to the State House, and I think the Honorable Senator of Isiolo addressed to this matter yesterday. There is really nothing wrong with members of Jubilee going to State House, but they did. They went. Instead of the leadership of Azimio to call members of Jubilee and ask them of their discussions at State House, they opted to go out in public rallies to insult members of Jubilee, calling them political prostitutes. And these are leaders. If members of parliament cannot interact with the head of state because of their political affiliation, then it would be only fair that also the governors of the same political affiliation not to interact with the head of state. If this punishment is being laid out on Jubilee because they have met with the head of state, why is it okay for some leaders to meet with the head of state and others not to? As far as exiting Azimio, I have mentioned it here. It is not a decision that has been reached to the very end. And I would urge the leadership to hold their horses, and for those who are itching for these positions to also wait, because the positions will still be there for the taking. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
What is your point of order, Senator Kathuri Murungi?
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I don't want to get to the details of the reasons why there are some movements of the leadership in the minority side. But, Mr. Speaker, I've been struggling to read this standing order 23 all the way to 6B. But there is nowhere, Mr. Speaker, that the Speaker is given time to respond to the request by the minority leader. So I find it a bit strange that the minority leader can come in the floor of this House, Mr. Speaker, to demand, and furiously so, that you should give a response to him immediately after he has served with the letter, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, your office is an honorable office. And if, Mr. Speaker, will not respect it, I think we are moving to the wrong direction. So I will kindly request Honorable Minority Leader to hold your horses and give the office of the Speaker time. And now I'm speaking as a senator for Meru County, not as a deputy speaker. So that we can have respect in this House, Mr. Speaker. We must be given time even to understand the reasons, because the Mbaka at the end of the day will stop at you, Honorable Speaker. And also, Mr. Speaker, Honorable Minority Leader, you are out of order to come and reprimand the Speaker to give you an answer on the floor. Therefore, I think kindly apologize to the Speaker, give him time to respond to your request. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday you rightly said, and we supported, I'm rising on point standing order number 23. You rightly pointed out that you are strictly going to conduct the business of this House using the standing order. I implore you, Mr. Speaker, sir, to strictly adhere to that directive, because the matter before you is defined in Standing Order number 23. 23, entire 23, and specifically 23.6, that says upon a decision being made by the minority party under this standing order, the decision of the party shall be communicated to the Speaker in writing, together with the minutes of the meeting at which the decision was made. Mr. Speaker, I think we are going contrary to the standing orders by allowing debate on this matter. It is simply a communication to you, and you verify the documentation and the particulars that have been given to you and communicate to the House. It is out of order for senators to debate this matter. That the standing orders is very clearly, it just requires a communication. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, don't be invited to be a judge on a matter that involves a political party. We have had rulings. When I was in the National Assembly, this matter came up, we had a ruling. In the last Senate, this matter came up with a ruling. And the Speaker clearly pronounced himself that he is not a judge in a matter of a political party. You simply communicate the communication that has been made to you by the respective party. So, Mr. Speaker, based on your pronouncement yesterday, we would want to urge you to strictly adhere to the provisions of the standing order. Thank you.
Honorable Senators, if you look at your order paper, it is fairly long today. And therefore, we should not entertain unnecessary points of order. When the leader of minority stood to raise a point of order, I followed very keenly to pick what the point of order was all about. And when I couldn't trace the point of order, I asked him, what is the point of order? Still, I couldn't pick the point of order. Indeed, I received a communication yesterday evening from the office of the minority leader indicating changes in the office of the minority whip. It was received beyond 5 p.m. That communication is being processed in the usual manner that every business of this House is processed. I take it disorderly from the minority leader to stand on the floor of this House to basically and indeed frog march the chair by demanding that the chair makes a communication now and now. That communication is being processed in the usual manner, and that communication is going to be made as per the standing orders. There shall be no inordinate delay in that matter. However, having listened to the many points of orders that have been made, while making that communication, I'll be making a ruling on this matter. If the others points of order had not been risen, it would be a straightforward matter, because I'll just abide by the communication from the minority leader. But having listened to senators rise on point of order, it will only be fair that I also address myself to those points of order that have been raised. And therefore, as I communicate on that letter by the minority leader, I will be making a ruling on the many points of orders that you have made, so that we can rest this matter and move forward. I thank you.
Order number 6, notice of motion.
What is the point of order, minority leader, Stewart Matai?
Mr. Speaker, as I stated, and I know you have made a ruling on this matter, on what has been stated here as in a form of a debate with regards to the letter that I've written to you. But Mr. Speaker, I only want to pray and hope that we stick to the standing orders of the House, because as it is, or as you have refused to, or as you have declined to give your ruling, your ruling today, and I don't know whether this matter really requires an implementation or a ruling. Mr. Speaker, I would urge that, you see, as you can see on the minority side, I'm all alone because I've already submitted the letter. I don't understand when I'm being interrupted when I'm still on my feet, as the standing order provides that if I'm on a standing order,
leader,
then I should not be interrupted.
Kindly take your seat. Kindly. Honorable Senators, please take time to read your standing orders, please. If you do that, we're going to have minimal interactions. I mean, minimal interjections as we prosecute business before this House. When the chair makes a ruling, you don't revisit that matter. It's here. I allowed the minority leader to stand on a point of order, hoping that he's going to pick on a different matter that I've not ruled on. I've already ruled on that matter. If you're to rise on a point of order, it must be on a very different subject, not on that particular matter. That matter rests until the chair gives its ruling. Thank you. Next order. Senator Haji.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On a different matter, Mr. Speaker, I know you have ruled on the previous matter. I would just like also to inform the House that Jubilee, as a party, has equally written a letter regarding this matter. So, Mr. Speaker, I would also ask your good office to make a ruling, having looked at both letters from the coalition. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Haji. Honorable Senators, maybe I switch to Kiswahili. That way we may make progress. Waheshimiwa Senators, maseneta wa bunge la Seneti, nataka niwasihi, tafadhalini tusome kanuni zinazoendesha ratiba ya bunge la Senate. Tukifanya hivyo, shughuli yetu ya bunge itakuwa rahisi sana. Bunge hili lina sheria zake. Hata tupitie shida aina gani, shida ile ina sheria zake ambayo imewekwa hapa wazi. Nimewasikiliza wale ambao wameinuka kwa hoja za nidhamu. Baada ya kuwasikiliza, nikasema kwamba nitatoa uamuzi wangu. Na nikasema kwamba ikiwa una jambo ambalo linagusia lile swala ambalo tayari tumelizungumzia katika hoja zenu za nidhamu, hakuna haja kuinuka na kulizungumzia tena. Seneta Haji, unayozungumza ni yale yale ambayo tumeyazungumza. Kwa hivyo umekiuka nidhamu. Tafadhalini, mambo ya barua iliyoandikwa ni kiongozi walio wachache nimezungumzia hapa. Mambo ya barua ambayo imeandikwa, ile ambayo Seneta Haji amezungumzia, pia iko mezani mwangu. Wakati natoa uamuzi, hayo yote tutaweka bayana. Na nikasema kwamba hatutachelewa. Ni kweli kwamba upande wa walio wachache wanasema kwamba wanahamu kwamba jambo hili tulitatue twende mbele. Mimi nataka niwapatie hakikisho wale walio upande wa walio wachache kwamba hakutakuwa kamwe kuchukua wakati ili kutatua jambo hili. Uamuzi wangu utakuja kwa haraka na sidhani kwamba tutachelewesha haki yenu. Kwa hivyo tafadhalini, hii mada ambayo tumezungumzia tuache pale na mpatie fursa ili nilete uamuzi, na uamuzi wangu sitauchelewesha. Asanteni. The Chair of JLAC, kindly proceed.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay before the House the following paper. Today, 15th of February 2023. This, Mr. Speaker, is the report of Standing Committee on Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights on the consideration of the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 5 of 2022. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay.
Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Senator Ledama.
Mheshimiwa Spika, ndazungumza kwa Kiswahili, ndajaribu pia mimi kunena na Kiswahili. Mimi nasimama katika kanuni za bunge ya kwanza ambaye nasema ya kwamba jambo ambalo halijaweza kuzingatiwa katika kanuni hili, Mheshimiwa Spika anaweza tupatia mwenendo wa kufuatilia. Sijui kama nimeharibu Kiswahili ama nimeongea vizuri. Yangu ni kwamba tukitazama hizi kanuni za sheria, ili ndio tuweze kuketi hapa vizuri, ningekusihi kwa heshima kubwa uweze kutupa tarehe ile ambaye utaweza, kwa sababu umesema kweli, umesema utatupa tarehe.
Senator,
na ni kwa sababu ya jambo moja. Mheshimiwa, nipe nafasi sekundi 20 peke yake.
Senator Ledama, tafadhali rejea kwa kiti chako na ukae utulie. Next order, please. Senator Sifuna.
Mheshimiwa Spika, najua kwamba niko kwenye vitabu vyako vibaya, labda hunioni. Lakini nilikuwa nataka guidance yako ama mwongozo wako. Kama iwapo seneta atasimama hapa na azungumze na anitaje ama mtaje seneta mwingine, mbona hawezi kupatia yule seneta ambaye ametajwa nafasi ya kujitetea, kwa sababu uamuzi wako nao ujumuishe maoni ya kila mtu? Kwa sababu ndugu yangu Seneta Haji amezungumza na akataja mambo fulani kunihusu mimi kama katibu mkuu wa chama, lakini hujanipa fursa na mimi nizungumzie madai ambayo ametoa kwangu, si kulingana na mada ya barua ya mstahiki kiongozi wa walio wachache, ila masuala ambaye ameyatoa ama madai ambaye ameyatoa kama kwangu mimi binafsi kama katibu mkuu wa chama cha ODM. Na hilo ndio ilikuwa laniwasha hapa, Mheshimiwa Spika, na tunafika wakati ambapo tunaona iwapo sheria ni msumeno wa kweli, ukate Sifuna na ukate wale wengine. Lakini mimi naanza kuhisi ni kana kwamba, Mheshimiwa Spika, sisi wengine ambao sasa umetuweka pembeni pale, maoni yetu tena hayahitajiki kwenye mijadala katika nyumba hii. Kwa hivyo mimi naomba uamuzi wako. Je, jinsi ambavyo seneta wa Garissa amezungumzia masuala ambayo yanaambatana na mimi mwenyewe kama katibu mkuu wa chama, nitapata fursa gani? Ni baada ama kabla uamuzi ambao unapania kutoa kuhusu swala zima? Asante.
Tafadhalini waheshimiwa maseneta, nafikiri hii mada tumejadili na nimezungumza na kikawaambia ni vipi tutaenda kuendelea mbele. Mheshimiwa Seneta Sifuna, nataka nikwambie sasa kwamba wakati nafanya uamuzi, jina lako halitakuwa katika uamuzi ule. Kwa hivyo usiwe na shaka. Manake katika maamuzi yangu siendi kwa majina ya senators. Uamuzi wangu utaambatana na sheria na kanuni za bunge. Kwa hivyo usiwe na shaka kwamba pengine katika uamuzi wangu nitakutaja na pengine nizungumze kwamba uchukuliwe nidhamu ama ushtakiwe. Hilo halitafanyika. Kwa hivyo usiwe na wasiwasi wakati nafanya uamuzi wangu. Yale yote yamezungumzwa, nataka nikwambie kwamba hayataguswa katika uamuzi wangu. Uamuzi wangu utaenda kwa kanuni zinazoendesha bunge na sheria ambazo zinaongoza taifa letu la Kenya. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to give notices of the following motions. Motion number 1, Mr. Speaker, the approval of the Senate calendar for the second session of the 13th Parliament, that pursuant to Standing Order number 32.1, the Senate approves the calendar, that's for regular session, for the second session of the 13th Parliament, February to December 2023, laid on the table of the Senate on Wednesday, 15th February 2023. 2, approval of Senator David Wafula Wakoli, MP, to serve in the Committee of the Powers and Privileges, that notwithstanding the resolution of the Senate made on 13th October 2022 and 15th November 2022 on the approval of senators to serve in the select committees of the Senate, and pursuant to Section 15(1) B and 2 of the Parliamentary Powers and Privilege Act and the Standing Order number 197 and 199, the Senate approves Senator David Wakoli Wafula, MP, to serve in the Committee of the Powers and Privileges in place of Senator Miraj Abdullahi, MP. 3, approval of changes in the membership of the standing committees. 1, that notwithstanding the resolution of the Senate made on the 13th October 2022 and 15th November 2022 on the approval of senators to serve in the select committees of the Senate and pursuant to Standing Order number 199, 228, and the fourth schedule to the standing orders, the Senate approves the following senators nominated by the Senate Business Committee to serve in the standing committees of the Senate as follows. A, Standing Committee on Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries, Senator David Wafula Akoli to replace Senator Maureen Tabitha Mutinda. 2, Standing Committee on Devolution and Intergovernmental Relation, Senator David Wafula Akoli to replace Senator Esther Okenyuri, MP. 3, Standing Committee on Energy, Senator William Kisang Kipkemoi, MP, to replace Senator Veronica W. Minor, MP. 4, Standing Committee on Information, Communication and Technology, the Senator William Kisang Kipkemoi, MP, to replace Senator Gloria Oruoba. 5, Standing Committee on Justice, Legal Affairs Committee and Human Rights, Senator Karen Nyamu to replace Senator Samson Kiprotich Cherargei. 6, Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare, Senator Gloria Nagoma Oruoba, MP, to replace Senator Karen Nyamu. 7, Standing Committee on Trade, Industrialization and Tourism, Senator Dr. Leleguel Tumbes and Senator Esther Okenyuri, MP, to replace Senator Danson Mungatana and Senator Tabitha Karanja Keroche. Motion number 4, approval of Senator William Kisang Kipkemoi, MP, to serve in the Select Committee of the County Public Investment and Special Funds, that notwithstanding the resolution of the Senate made on the 19th October 2022 and 15th November 2022 on the approval of senators to serve in the select committees of the Senate and pursuant to Standing Order number 194, 197, and 199 of the Senate approves Senator William Kisang Kipkemoi, MP, to serve in the County Public Investments and Special Funds Committee in place of Senator James Kamau Murango, MP. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Next order. Senator Gloria.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion.
What is your point of order, Senator Eddy?
Mr. Speaker, you made a ruling based on a communication that was given to you in what appears as late notification, and the changes that are being made by the other side of the House.
Senator Eddy,
no,
have you just walked it?
I'm talking about the order that the majority just talked about
but
now.
As you're raising a point of order, do not
refer to the other one.
Infer on that other matter.
I apologize, Mr. Speaker. The order that we are discussing that the majority leaders just read was not, in our view, communicated at the right time. And we are observing a situation whereby they are having their changes made and we are not having our changes made on this side.
Senator Eddy.
Just relax.
Senator Eddy.
And I think it is important.
Senator Eddy, just have a seat. You'll come back. Senator Eddy, just have your seat. When the chair is upstanding, Senator Eddy. Honorable Senators, yesterday we spent time here constituting the Senate Business Committee. After electing the Senate Business Committee, we proceeded to have a first meeting. And in that meeting, SBC looked at the business that is supposed to appear on the floor and on the order paper. One of the business that was passed by SBC to appear on the order paper today is what the majority leader has just read. If indeed the minority side wanted a similar, they had a similar issue like the changes done by the majority side, nothing would have stopped them by putting that before SBC just like the majority side did. In fact, I remember in that meeting, the minority leader asked, and I told him, you can go ahead, go make your changes, and I can even convene an extraordinary SBC so that your changes can be carried in the order paper. That has not been done. So Speaker Eddy, stand guided, please. Whatever you're seeing in the order paper is a product of SBC, not a product of the majority side. Yes, Senator Kamau.
Mheshimiwa Spika, nakushukuru sana kwa sababu ya mwongozo ambao umeweza kutoa. Mimi kama mwana Jubilee, Mheshimiwa Spika, nataka kusema hivi kwamba Wakenya wamechoka. Mheshimiwa Spika, mambo ya maandamano tunasema hatutaki. Mheshimiwa Spika, umetoa uamuzi. Na sasa tuko na mambo mengi sana Mheshimiwa Spika ambao sasa tunafaa tufanye hapa. Hawa watu sasa wameanza ku walk out badala ya tuendelee na kazi ambayo tunafanya tufanye.
Senator Kamau, what is your point of order? What is your point of order?
Mheshimiwa, nataka kusema hivi. Umetoa mwelekeo, sasa Mheshimiwa Spika tunaomba tuendelee mbele. Wale ambao wanataka kutoka nje, Mheshimiwa Spika watoke, tuache tufanyie wananchi kazi.
Senator Gloria. Senator Gloria.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion. That aware that period poverty refers to the common challenge plaguing women globally, wherein they are unable to attend schools or work as a cause of lack of funds for sanitary products, that is both a health risk and a signal of gender inequity. Further aware that in rural Kenya, 2 out of 3 pad users receive pads.
Senator Gloria be heard in silence, please.
Kindly. Further, in rural Kenya, 2 out of 3 pad users receive pads from sexual partners, and 65% of women and girls can't afford sanitary pads, forcing them to use alternative materials like grass, cotton wool, and cloth, which lack adequate absorbent qualities, resulting in frequent leakage and hygiene issues. Concerned that period poverty, also referred to as the shadow pandemic, contributes to global and regional gender inequity, as women are forced to solicit help from men in order to satisfy a basic health need, with 10% of 15-year-old girls having sex to pay for sanitary products. Further concerned that data from the Ministry of Education indicates that a girl that is absent from school for 4 days a month loses 13 learning days, equivalent to 2 weeks of learning in every school term, translating to 39 learning days or 6 weeks of learning time in a term, and up to 18 of 108 weeks in primary and 24 weeks of 144 weeks in learning in secondary school. Noting that while the government, through the State Department for Gender Affairs, was charged with the responsibility of procuring and distributing sanitary towels for 3.7 million girls in public primary schools, special primary and secondary schools in the country at a cost of 470 million during the 2017-2018 financial year, which amount needs to be increased in order to fully address and mitigate the problem. Now, therefore, the Senate resolves that the Ministry of Public Service, Gender and Affirmative Action, in partnership with the Ministry of Education and the Council of Governors, to 1, facilitate provision of feminine hygiene products in all public schools. 2, ensure that all schools that don't have bathrooms that facilitate privacy, cleanliness, or proper disposal of hygiene products as properly equipped. 3, create awareness and take advocacy measures on reproductive health issues related to period poverty. 4, include in the curriculum a dedicated lesson per week to teach girls on menstrual hygiene. And 5, ensure that sanitary products will be obtainable, timely, consistently, and in a way that respects the dignity of the concerned persons. Thank you.
Senator Mohammed Chute.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Incessant high electricity cost in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, that aware that energy is an essential factor of production and its total consumption is a major determinant of performance of the economy, with cost and reliability spurring or stifling economic growth. Further aware that there has been a significant growth in the demand for electricity in Kenya, driven by the economic growth and increased efforts towards rural electrification, while the supply has been constrained due to, among other factors, the over-reliance of, on hydroelectric power generating plants that have been negatively impacted by perennial drought experienced in the country. Noting that the imbalance in the demand and supply of power, coupled with payments by the Kenya Power and Lighting Company for produced power not consumed and fluctuating in the foreign exchange rates, contributes to the high cost of electricity. Appreciating that Kenya has made strides in diversifying its power sources with geothermal plants, offering tremendous potential for zero carbon source of power, already producing nearly 1 gigawatts of power. Concerned that private power generating companies, popularly referred to as independent power producers, only supply 28% of power to Kenya Power, but account for 47% of power purchase costs, calling for the need to enhance energy management in Kenya. Now, therefore, the Senate resolves that A, Standing Committee on Energy to undertake an inquiry into 1, contracts signed by IPPs detailing the cost, capacity, and duration of the contractual agreements and the implications on affordability of electricity in the country. 2, discrepancy in the cost of electricity sold to Kenya Power by Kenyan, imports from Ethiopia, and IPPs. And 3, the diversion of electricity generated by Lake Turkana wind power to the national grid by passing the inadequately supplied northern frontier counties of both Marsabit and Samburu. B, Ministry of Energy to come up with a policy framework aimed at 1, lowering the cost of electricity as a way of addressing the high cost of living, and 2, enhancing clean energy by switching to renewable source of energy, such as geothermal power, wind energy, among others, as a way of reducing the carbon footprint. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Wahome Wamatinga. Senator Wamatinga? Yes, majority. What's your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, I beg to indulge you on something together with my colleagues. I have seen the order paper. It's quite a heavy one. I know we are still doing notices of motion. The fact of the matter is that even if we were to approve or give notices of the same motions, chances are between now and 6:30 for the rise of the House, we may not get to the point of debating any of those notices of motion. Mr. Speaker, while handling that, taking into consideration what is happening in the House, and one very important factor, the fact that there are 2 colleague senators who are not serving in any committee whatsoever. That is Senator Wafula Wakoli of Bungoma and Senator William Kisang, that we have proposed order number 11 and 12 as long as the rest of the motions. Would I be in order, Mr. Speaker, to request you that we rearrange the order paper this afternoon, allow us to prosecute those particular business in that order. Once we conclude on those changes that you're making, so that we can allow our committees to work, even as our colleagues on the minority side continue to rearrange themselves and plan the things that they're planning, but at least we have settled things in the committees, Mr. Speaker. I want to humbly request that you permit we do that. If we conclude in good time, and we have a few procedural motions as well, which we don't intend to debate, just mundane, though important things like the parliamentary calendar, limitation of time of debate, very basic things which we need not debate about, Mr. Speaker. That's my humble request to you, if you so permit. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Majority, kindly approach the chair. Honorable Senators, after consulting the majority leader, we will proceed with the order paper as drawn. The chairperson of the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget. So we are going to defy Wamatinga's notice of motion. Next order, clerk.
Order number 7, statements.
Senator Mariam Omar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise pursuant to Standing Order 52.1 to make a statement on the matter of national concern, which is to register my displeasure with the manner in which our public education institutions are treating our Muslim girls in restricting their observance of their faith through banning the wearing of hijab, which is a blatant discrimination in enjoyment of the right to education. Mr. Speaker, whereas Kenya is a secular state, it is not founded on hostility to the region. Rather, the Constitution itself in preamble acknowledges supremacy of Almighty God and contain in its second schedule the national anthem, which is a prayer invoking God's lordship over the nation. The people of Kenya, in preamble to the Constitution, proclaim that they are, in quote, proud of our ethnic culture, religion, diversity, and determined to live in peace, unity as one invisible sovereignty nation. This is ethos that it is incumbent upon all schools to teach our students from early age. Determination to live in peace undivided in spite of diversity at micro-national level must be translated
an established office of the leader of opposition. Finally, Madam Speaker, let me also say that it is also important to empower Senate in terms of oversight. The Constitution allows division of revenue between the national government and the county government. We as members of parliament oversight the national government. Largely, we may be facilitated, but probably we may also require further facilitation. But for the Senate, there is no single requirement of facilitation for them to be able to oversight the counties. And that is why it is very, very critically important to have the Senate facilitated through a fund which is also in the Constitution to be able to follow up for the many billions that go to the counties for development and be able to oversight. Madam Speaker, since this is a general debate, there is no vote that will be taken on it, but generally I support the whole idea of entrenching whatever has been proposed in the Constitution. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Very well. Member for Mandera South, the Honorable Abdul Haru. For members, I'm trying to stick to the list as much as possible, and I can hear what
thank you.
you have said. And also, before you speak, I would like to say that I am not going to take the points of order because I think it's like trying to catch attention. Honorable members, you realize that these members have done a lot of research on this motion, so let us give them enough time to speak. You may proceed.
Thank
Member
you.
for Mandera South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I stand to support this motion, and I thank His Excellency the President for sharing the 4 issues that he has presented in his memorandum. The issues are very important, and the fact that they have been debated for long, that is since previous years until now, and they are still relevant, makes them quite important issues. And therefore, I say the 4 issues that have been shared in the President's memorandum, that is the 2/3 gender principle matter, the creation of the office of the leader of opposition, and the inclusion of various decentralized funds in the Constitution, including the NGCDF, NGAF, and the Senate Oversight Committee, Senate Oversight Fund, and also the restructuring of parliamentary oversight to allow for cabinet secretaries to appear before the House. I think those 4 issues are timely and most welcome. And I thank the Speaker for referring the issues to the relevant committees. It is my hope that those relevant committees, including JLAC, the Joint Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee, and the Procedure and House Rules Committee, will expedite the processes that will help us and for all. And I think we had already, the Joint Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee has already made quite some work on this, And it is my hope that the memorandum from the President, which is inclusive of the 4 issues, will not reinvent the wheel when it comes to the matter of NGCDF and NGAF and the Senate Oversight Fund, because the Joint Parliamentary Ad hoc Committee has already made some good progress on this matter. Therefore, we need to build on the work that has already been done by this committee so that we don't delay this process any further. And I think we all know the importance of NGCDF. It has built a lot of schools. In the last 5 years only, according to reports we have from the NGCDF board, just in the sector of bursary alone, 6 million students and 57 billion shillings have been used to support education sector in this country. And we cannot belittle the importance of NGCDF and this matter of people running to court all the time, challenging the disbursements and challenging the implementation of this process and causing confusion is a matter that needs to be rested once and for all. And that is why it is important that we look at these matters now. And it is an historic opportunity for this parliament, the 13th parliament, to be able to settle all of these issues now. And it is good to note that His Excellency the President, William Samoei Ruto, has shown the goodwill that he's going to support these processes through and through. The only thing we need to do, because we don't know whether it will come a time when we'll have a president and the executive which is as committed as the president we have now in support of these 4 important issues that we have today. When it comes to the 2/3 gender principle, I think a lot of people have expressed themselves on this. A lot of honorable members have expressed themselves on this. And this matter should not be looked in the lenses, from the lenses of male or female gender. This is an inclusive gender matter. And as it was mentioned by some of the honorable members in the morning, this is a matter which appears today like it is perhaps a gap that needs to be filled by the female gender. But who knows, a few years down the road, we may have female gender in the majority in this house, and it is the male gender who will require to get the nominations for this. Therefore, I would wish that we look at this matter from that lens, so that we give it the 100% support that it requires, knowing that the shoe, like it was put by another member, the shoe might be on the other foot tomorrow. Having said that, I think I will stop there. The Honorable Speaker, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. The member for Mombasa, the Honorable Zamzam Chimba.
Asante sana, Mheshimiwa Spika. Nipongeze mjadala wa leo, hasa ikifika tulutu 3 ya kina mama. Na niweze kumpongeza sana mbunge wa Mandera kupigia pondo sana. Manake leo ni kina mama, kesho mtalia nyinyi wanaume. Kwa hiyo lazima tuwafikiane tuweze kupitisha mswada huu. Ningependa pia kuchangia mjadala wa leo na kuweza kusema kuwa ngafu, naanza na ngafu kwa sababu mimi mwakilishi wa kina mama, tuweze kuiweka na NGCDF na mgao wa ziada wa uangalizi ambao mwaita oversight. Na huu mgao wa oversight, pengine mimi ningependa kusema, sijui tukisema senator oversight wakati sote nafikiri tungeita parliament oversight fund, mgao wa bunge wa uangalizi, ingekuwa ni bora zaidi. Lakini yote 9-10, napenda kupongeza na kusema itakuwa ni vema sana tukiweka ndani ya katiba yetu ili kuweza kusaidia jamii kule mashinani. Inaaminika kuwa mpaka sasa watoto wetu wako nyumbani kwa sababu tu kuna mtu aliamka siku moja asubuhi akaona hawa watoto wanaopewa hizi pesa za basari hawafai mpaka iwekwe kwenye kwenye katiba. Lakini yote 9-10 maadamu ni sheria, mimi napendelea kusema kuwa tuweze kuweka mgao huu ndani ya sheria ili uweze kufikia wananchi kule chini. Jambo lingine ambalo limezungumziwa leo katika mjadala wa leo, na inasikitisha sana, siku zote wenzetu wakisimama utasikia Kamkunji, utasikia sijui Mavoko, utasikia wapi, lakini huwezi sikia kanisani. Mimi napenda kusema tuweke heshima, tusikumbushane kule tulikotoka, tusikumbushane nani alimuibia mwenzake, nani alipita, nani hakupita, kwa sababu kama tunataka kujenga taifa, basi tuwe na muafaka wa kuwa tutaweza kutoa heshima kwa viongozi wote. Na siwezi kukaa katika bunga hili nikiona kiongozi wangu wa chama akiweza kudhalilishwa, hata kama wataji majina huwa naelewa wanaenda wapi. Kwa hiyo tuheshimiane, tumheshimu yule pia alikuwa ni kiongozi ambaye alipigania taifa hili na aliweza kutuletea hii katiba ambayo tunafurahia leo kama kina mama 47 ndani ya bunge. Hii katiba yake ambayo alileta 2010 Bwana Raila aliweza kuipigania. Leo hii tunazungumzia thuluthi mbili ya wanawake ndani ya bunge kwa sababu yake. Ningependa pewe heshima na tuheshimu viongozi wetu wote. Na ningependa kusema, najua wengine pengine wako kule kwenye chai wanaangalia kwenye televisheni, wameweza kumgusagusa hapa, lakini kama mama Mombasa siwezi kubali. Tumheshimu Baba Raila Amolo Odinga kama tunavyostahili kuheshimu viongozi wengine. Na ningependa pia kusema katika serikali iliyoko inasikitisha sana. Leo mjadala ambao umeletwa hapa, mjadala wa kwanza ulikuwa juu ya vyeo.
I have a point of order by the Honorable Dindi Nyoro, member for Kiharu.
Sorry, Madam Speaker, I think I pressed to contribute. I'm sorry for that.
Asante sana ndugu yangu Ndindi kwa kuweka wazi. Nikiendelea, ningependa kusema mijadala imeletwa mingi leo katika bunge hili. Ingine imekuwa ni ya kupewa vyeo vya PSC kwa ndugu yetu kipenzi Bwana Mdhama, tunampenda sana na tunamtakia kila la kheri, lakini awe na jicho la tatu kuangalia pande zote kama alivyosema kiongozi wetu wa wachache katika bunge. Angalie kuwa hata nafasi za kazi zinatolewa pande zote mbili bila kuangalia kabila wala chama wala rangi. Hilo nampongeza sana, lakini masikitiko yangu makubwa ni kuwa Wakenya wanakufa na njaa. Nakumbuka ndugu zetu wa Northeastern, ndugu zetu wa Tana River, ndugu zetu wengi, ukiangalia kila sehemu watu wanakufa njaa. Wakenya wanahangaika. Tukiangalia wanyama wanakufa. Mimi ningependa kama wabunge tuweze kupanua akili zetu. Tuweze kupanua akili zetu kwa upana zaidi na kuhakikisha kuwa wale walotupigia kura kuja hapa katika bunge tunawapa kipaumbele. Chakula na njaa imekuwa baa la kustajabisha sana katika taifa hili, lakini tumelifungia macho. Leo hii tunazungumza mambo ya vyeo, tunazungumza mambo mengine, lakini tumesahau Wakenya takriban mamilioni leo hii hawajui wataweka nini mdomoni. Leo hii wanatafuta hata maji. Na ndio maana mimi nakubaliana na huu mjadala unaosema kuwa mawaziri tuwalete hapa bungeni waweze kuwajibika. Manake leo tunataka tuwaulize, umepewa waziri wa kilimo, umepewa waziri wa maji, umepanga mikakati gani kama waziri, ama akili yako na kichwa chako umekipanua vipi janga hili la njaa uweze kulipigania, kuhakikisha kuwa leo kule Turkana wanapata chakula, kule Northeastern wanapata chakula, pale Mwakirunge Mombasa tunapata chakula. Kwa sababu hatuwezi kukaa siku zote miaka nenda miaka rudi, njaa imekuwa ni kitu cha kurejelewa. Ukiangalia kule Dubai ilikuwa ni janga, ilikuwa ni mahali ambapo ni desert, lakini leo ni kijani kibichi kila sehemu. Leo Dubai ambayo ilikuwa jua la choma paka katikati ya utosi, leo wanatoa matunda mazuri, wanatoa mboga nzuri tena safi. kwa sababu wamepata viongozi wenye kuvuta msukumo wa akili zao, wenye kuwafikiria wananchi. Kwa miaka 3 Dubai iliyokuwa ni janga, leo imekuwa ni mahali ambapo inatoa uzalishaji wa chakula hata zaidi. Na ningependa pia kwa haya kuelezea pia waziri wa kilimo. Nimeona pia wakulima wakilalamika kuwa mbolea ambayo ilitolewa bure leo inauzwa 3,500. Sisi tunataka chakula, tunataka Wakenya wapate chakula, lakini maji tumeongeza ushuru, mbolea zinauzwa, mashamba yamekuwa adimu. Tutawezaje kubadilisha maisha ya Wakenya ikiwa sisi tunaweka Wakenya katika hali ngumu zaidi na wakulima? Katika bunge hili la 13 ningeomba tuweze kuweka historia, wabunge wenzangu. Ningependa tuweze kuweka historia ya kuweza kubadilisha maisha ya Kenya. Ningependa tuweke historia ya kuweza kufuata katiba na kuangalia kina mama wamejaa katika bunge hili. Siwezi kutaja kwa majina, lakini leo imesikitisha sana mbunge wa bunge hili ameweza kusema mahali katika mkutano kuwa kina mama watakia nini kujaza ndani ya bunge, watakuja kuwa maflower girl, sijui watakuja kuwa maslay queen. Mimi ningependa kumwambia mahali aliko slay queen, pengine akileta mke wake hapa tuweza mpa hilo jina, lakini kwa sisi atuheshimu kina mama bunge hili. Hatuja kuja hapa kwa matani. Hatuja kuja hapa kutafutana na watu. Tumekuja kutafutia Wakenya haki zao, tumekuja kuangalia vile tunaweza kuboresha maisha ya wananchi na hadhi ya mama katika taifa hili, hadhi ya mama aweze kuheshimika. Sio popote utakapomuona mwanamke basi unafikiria mambo ya ngono, hapana. Tunataka heshima kwa kina mama. Nikijaribu kumalizia, mheshimiwa, ningependa pia katika yale ambayo yamezungumzwa leo ambayo ni ya kuwekwa ndani ya katiba, jambo la IEBC pia liangaliwe. Hatuwezi kusema sisi kila siku tutunga sheria, leo tumpatia kiongozi wa upinzani ofisi yake rasmi katika taifa hili, wakati ambapo pengine kitengo cha IEBC kinaweza kupeleka taifa hili katika vita vya kila siku. Na ndio maana wenzetu leo mutakuwa mwatudhalilisha, mwatuita majina yote, the kamkunjis, the mavokos, lakini it ends with IEBC. Sisi tunataka usawa. Leo nikiumwa mimi, ukinicheka jua kesho utaumwa wewe. Kwa hiyo ikiwa wanaweza kuweka sawa IEBC iweze kuhudumikia Wakenya kwa usawa, tuweze kupata haki ya kila mmoja. Leo mama Zamzam nikianguka nijue nimeanguka kwa haki. Leo dadangu Nyakaira kianguka ajue ameanguka kwa haki. Lakini mambo ya kufanya filfinyange kisha Kenya ingie kwenye mtihani hatuwezi kubali. Naona muda unasi, lakini leo kama mama Mombasa naweza kuunga mjadala huu wa leo wa kuweza kuweka ofisi rasmi ya upinzani na kuweza kuweka two-thirds gender katika katiba hili. Naaminika kuwa naweza na tunaweza tukatimiza kwa pamoja. Asanteni sana na Mungu atubariki sote.
Very well. Member for Mombasa. The Honorable Kaluma.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we don't have a substantive bill before us. So, His Excellency the President is inviting us to share our thoughts and insights on these matters His Excellency remitted to the Speaker of this Honorable House. And so I'll keep to that, devoid of politics, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, on this first issue on implementation of two-thirds gender principle, let me clarify that the determination and the advice by the former Chief Justice to the President related and concerned the 12th Parliament. It is not an issue. Were anybody to seek to dissolve this Parliament, that person has to take a case to the High Court and have it rise to the Supreme Court or go to the Supreme Court on advisory opinion. And I'm saying that based on law and based on the fact that that advisory was made before this Parliament came into being, and it was not known how this Parliament would be composed. Number two, Madam Speaker, the measures the President proposes, and I know the President as a technical legal team advising on these proposals. Those measures, Madam Speaker, will still not help us to realize the two-third gender principle. Madam Speaker, the two-third gender principle begins its anchorage on Article 27 of the Constitution, dealing with the doctrine of equality and non-discrimination. Madam Speaker, the problem with two-third gender principle, and I'm not saying I'm opposed to it. I'm the son of a woman, the grandson of a woman, the father of a woman, and the husband of a woman, and the brother of women, several of them. So I support it. And I want our female gender, just as the male gender, to be in the leadership space, because their contributions are both valuable. The problem with the realization of the two-third gender principle is about the electoral system instituted by our Constitution, particularly at Article 38. Madam Speaker, everybody is entitled, under that article dealing with political rights, to stand for elections, to register to vote, and to vote whoever they want. And so that provision institutes what we call, Honorable Speaker, the first past, the post principle of elections, where people seek seats and the citizens the citizens within the various constituencies elect whoever they want. You cannot realize any specific gender quota, be it 1/3, be it 2/3, be it 1/2 principle in such a system. And Madam Speaker, I wanted to explain to members that go to the system in South Africa, where they've realized it. Go to the system in Rwanda, where they've realized it. It is not the first past the post, but it is the party list or proportionate representation system. If you go to South Africa or Rwanda, it is the party voted. And the elections laws there require the party, before the parties are voted in an election, to present a zebra list which enables the parties to meet the gender. And based on the numbers the party gets, Madam Speaker, the line is drawn and then the members are picked. The question you want to ask is whether Kenyans agree to parties, ultimately in the end electing the representatives of them. So long as Kenyans, Madam Speaker, insist that they have to vote, Madam Speaker, for their MPs, for their president, for their leaders, and that the person who wins the elections wins, I think it is very unfair for anybody, without amending the Constitution to institute the party list system, to wait for Honorable Gikaria to be elected by the people of Nakuru, to wait for Kaluma, to wait for Honorable Rene to be specially elected, then start questioning Parliament why they are not properly composed. That is not the business of Parliament. And so I want to request the President that I agree with him that we need to establish these gender principles. But the amendment we need is not this amendment that we are putting in here, but an amendment, Madam Speaker, which removes the first past the post system under the Constitution and institutes the party list. I doubt Kenyans would agree, because in any event, even if the bill were to first come here, Honorable Deputy Majority Leader will confirm, it still has to go to referendum. In fact, most of these things have still to go to referendum. And I doubt, knowing how our parties operate, Kenyans would accept a situation like party list. So we are stuck with it. The fact is that with the constitutional design, it is incapable of being realized. Madam Speaker, I agree with the President on the proposal to have the CDF entrenched in the Constitution, with the proposal to have the National Government Affirmative Action Fund entrenched in the Constitution. Save to add, Madam Speaker, that we are not seeking this entrenchment because the current CDF Act or the law underpinning the National Government Affirmative Action Fund is in any way unconstitutional. I think what we need to do is to have the teams in court explain it to court that the time has come for the court to tell those Kenyans who believe only CDF ONGAF should be litigated to find other business to do. And I think that is the direction we are going. We are seeking to entrench it so that it is firmly secured and so that those benefits can continue to exist beyond the wishes of Parliament and the executive per time. But Madam Speaker, I have a problem with this proposal relating to Senate Oversight Fund. Whether we call it Senate Oversight Fund, whether we call it Parliamentary Oversight Fund, Madam Speaker, it will run afoul of the Constitution. And I know Honorable Joanna Ngeno will agree with me. And this is not to say, Madam Speaker, that I'm opposed to senators being facilitated better. You know, Madam Speaker, the remuneration of any public or state officers is to enable them discharge their functions. Whether we call ourselves members of Parliament, whether we call others members of National Assembly, if you look at Article 260 of the Constitution, our title is members of Parliament. The roles of a member of Parliament run from Article 93 to Article 96. And what are they in summary at Article 94, Honorable Speaker? The roles of a member of Parliament, whether in the Senate or in the National Assembly, are legislation, are representation, and of course oversight, whether of state officers or of budget, and a bit of appropriation. Madam Speaker, our salary, the salary of the Senate, if it is small, if it is big, it is to enable them discharge those roles. You want to ask yourself the question, if we were to create the Parliamentary Oversight Fund, what will stop us from creating Parliamentary Legislation Fund, Parliamentary Representation Fund? Then Honorable Ndindi Nyoro will be asking you, then what will you be getting your salary for? Because you've created separate funds to do these things. Anybody taking that bill, if it were to be proposed to the Constitutional Court or to the Supreme Court, will get the entire bill collapsed before it is debated. The way to go, and I'm saying this because Parliament, the President proposed that we find a way to facilitate the Houses of Parliament better. If it is salary which is low, let us get the Salaries and Remuneration Commission to create a leeway, whether it is for the Senate or members of Parliament in the National Assembly. If it is about facilitation, Parliament as an entity, Honorable Speaker, already has the power to budget. Let us have a budget line under the PSC whose duty it is to facilitate and to cater for the welfare of the members, so that that budget, whether we say the senators will be getting more in terms of the people they employ or the facilitation, we budget for it straight away and it goes outside there. Otherwise, this thing we are calling Senate Oversight Fund will not work. Honorable Speaker, the leader of official opposition cannot exist in a presidential system. And the leader of official opposition cannot exist absent the Prime Minister on the other side. Either way, this is going to change the structure and the functioning of Parliament. You want to ask yourself, Honorable Speaker, if you have the leader of official opposition, what would the minority leader be doing there? What would be the majority leader if the Prime Minister should be there? The way to go is that we have to make a decision whether we have a parliamentary system or we want a presidential system. We are happy that ministers should be coming here, Honorable Speaker, and this is important for me. But we should be careful, because members of Parliament, if you are not careful, we will kill all the committees, and that the committees will have no work.
Very well spoken, Honorable Kaluma. Member for Turkana Central, Joseph Emathi. The Honorable Naomi Wako, member for Marsabit.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for allowing me to add my voice to this very important debate that is going on. And from the onset, I want to say that I support the motion on the memorandum that the President has written to us, seeking our attention and also support. Madam Speaker, I support this motion because it touches on the areas that are very important to us as members of Parliament and as leaders of this country. I want to start with the affirmative action funds, NG, CDF, NGAF, and Senate oversight. I was in Senate, the 12th Parliament, as nominated senator. And the 5 years ended while we were pushing for this. The challenges the senators go through, they are supposed to oversight billions and billions of money when they have not even been facilitated. And unless they are facilitated, the corruption we are talking about, the mismanagement of funds, and all the things that we hear happening in the counties will not be controlled unless the senators will be empowered so that they can do their oversight their oversight role. So for that, I support that. I am of the view that the senators be given the oversight fund so that they can be facilitated, and that can help them to be more effective. Within GAF, it is now about 6-7 months since we were elected, but unfortunately up to today, we have not received the GAF funds. That is mainly why I support this, because if all this is covered in our constitution, then we have no challenges like this. We will not face these challenges. We'll be able to be more effective, and we will have something that will, support us, and women will come without any worries, serve and do their work even at the grassroots without any problem. And so even with the NG-CDF funds, we know that many students have been supported through these funds, many vulnerable children. When you look at the NGAF funds and the CDF fund, Madam Speaker, what I want to say here is that CDF covers a constituency, while NGAF covers the entire county. And what we have seen happening in our country, or the practice as at now, is the same amount of money that an area MP gets is the same amount of money that we are given as women representative. And that then confuses us, because you cannot compare a single constituency with 4 or 5 or 6 different constituencies in a county. When we amend this or bring this into our constitution, our interest will be taken care of, and even GAF fund will be well covered, and that then means that women will also get the funds that are relevant to their service, and that will help them to do their work effectively. Madam Speaker, on the issue of cabinet secretaries appearing before the members of parliament, I also support this, because right now there may be a gap between us and the cabinet secretaries, simply because some of them are not even known well by the members of the parliament. During the vetting, the CSS appear before their committees, but they are not known to everybody. So by them appearing, we will be able to create that good working relationship. We'll be able to talk to one another. We'll be able to have dialogue. We'll be able to bring issues that affect our country and also challenge them on the floor of the House. And Madam Speaker, that will then enhance the relationship of both the executive, the parliament and cabinet secretaries. It will also help us to be more effective, and even the CSS will be more effective. Representation of the people will be done well, and the people that we are serving, from the conversation that goes on and the debate and the questions that will be raised, they will see that their areas are well represented and the questions asked and answered very well. Unlike now, when maybe some of the CSS are not even known by the members of parliament. Again, on the position of the opposition leader, what I want to say is, for many years, we've had, of course, since independence, we've had this great nation that we all love and enjoy serving. But from the time that the opposition, when we started practicing multi-party issue, the leaders of opposition have always suffered because they use their money, they do their campaigns, and immediately after the campaigns and the elections are done, they are forgotten. But by having this position, we'll be able to have a special place for them, and they'll be able to have their own, whoever is there will have his own office and will be able to be busy. Madam Speaker, currently we are experiencing a challenge because our opposition leader, the opposition leader, Honorable Raila, is busy on the streets campaigning, not campaigning, but having rallies and having meetings with people. If this office is created, then he'll have a better place to meet his people, to organize his things, and he will be serving the nation in a better way. So having the place for opposition leader in parliament is something that is good, and we need to accept and move on with it. Madam Speaker, we know very well that where there is no vision, people perish. If we continue the way we are, we may not get anywhere. But allowing and embracing and giving them the opportunity to serve the country better by challenging our government and maybe even the government to come in future, that will be a good thing to practice. Now I want to mention something on the issue of two-third gender. Madam Speaker, this is something that we as women leaders have been fighting for and have been praying for. Today it is us, yes, but tomorrow, 10 years down the line, you do not know. Maybe we'll be sympathizing with the male gender. When we first started the debate of two-third gender, we thought that many people are supporting us. In fact, in 12th Parliament, Honorable Duale was very, very passionate, and together with many other members of Parliament, they were very passionate. They tried to support us. We had many breakfasts, but at the end of the day, we didn't succeed. And if our president is the one now to initiate the entire process, I think as women leaders, we should just run with the whole idea and see how best we can capture and, grab the opportunity and succeed in this, because it is long overdue. Our women have done a lot for this country to be where we are. When you look at the performance of women in every office or in everywhere where they serve, you cannot compare. They give their best and they serve the nation with a lot of passion. But when it comes to this, it has been very difficult, because when it comes to election, women face a lot of challenges because our campaigns are money-based and financed very well. And women have no much money, and so they face a lot of challenges and intimidated in many ways. But when we put this in place, then it will help women to get into power without much problem. And Madam Speaker, I just want to conclude by saying, I challenge the women in this House and even everywhere so that we can support this motion so that it succeeds, and then we will be proud that our government has taken care of us, and we will catch up with the rest of East Africa and African countries that have gone before us and embraced the leadership of women in a better way. I support this motion, and I thank you.
Very well. The member for Dagoretti North, Honorable Beatrice Elachi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also rise to speak on the message by the President on these opportunities that we have been given to discuss. Madam Speaker, on the onset, being a woman who started as a woman leader in this country in training women, not just outside, but also women in Parliament, I think one of the things that we have really talked about in this country until we've arrived to a level of passing the new constitution in 2010, when we thought, Madam Speaker, we will achieve now the issue of the two-thirds gender rule and move on as a country, as we even in the 11th Parliament had an opportunity to see all the bills that were to open space in terms of the new constitution being passed by this House. And at that time, we were unable completely, Madam Speaker, to even just touch on Article 100, Article 81, Article 27, all of them speaking about the affirmative action and the two-thirds gender rule. As we appreciate and thank the President for bringing in the messages, we again find ourselves, and I just want to speak very candid, Madam Speaker, as women, because again, the matter has been put into too many issues. And with these issues, you will find ourselves again losing this proposal if we are not careful and if we do not look at it as a House to agree that some of these issues can move on. Since we have the ad hoc committee that had started the process of CDF and all that, can be a good avenue to deal with the issues of CDF. And we remain with a few issues, which is the two-thirds gender rule on this proposal for it to work. But having said that, Madam Speaker, I think when I look at one, the issue of the two-thirds that has been brought in, and I think with good intentions, but I think also those who advised the President could have read and realized you have now picked on Article 27 of the Constitution, which is within the Bill of Rights. And that is why everyone is now talking about this referendum, because it's in the Bill of Rights. And anything that touches on the Bill of Rights, Kenyans themselves said you cannot implement without taking it to a referendum. And therefore, we might find ourselves thanking, but then again being short that we cannot do it until we get to a referendum. So, Madam Speaker, when you look at 27.8, it is very clear, and I know when you read word by word, it speaks on, in addition to the measures contemplated in Clause 6, the state shall take legislative and other measures to implement the principle that not more than two-thirds of the members of elective or appointive bodies shall be of the same gender. Now, the moment you bring that again, then you ask yourself, when we are going to nominate the women, how is it going to work, yet we are supposed to push it through political parties so that it becomes elective? So we would want to really, when we are canvassing now the real bill, it has to come out very clear so that as women, we don't start a journey again and find ourselves with the way we pushed with Duale 1, Duale 2, Duale 6, and we ended up with the same results. Madam Speaker, when you look at the issue, and this issue of the opposition office, I think, Madam Speaker, we must agree. Sometimes this House, we have to have our own mind and agree we are legislators. And where we feel things have not gone right, we don't need to just say they are right. We are a presidential system. It is Kenyans who agreed on a presidential system. Let them feel. The day they will go to another referendum, they will take us to a parliamentary system. But for now, let us tell Kenyans, whether you like your opposition leader or what, you cannot entrench it here because we are in a presidential system. We borrowed the American system. We have to live with it. There's no opposition leader in America. There's none. Trump is not there. There's majority and minority. And we must accept that. It is how the minority side works to ensure you put checks to our government, Madam Speaker, which I think that's the best way. And it will work even better. So if we try and bring this, then now everyone will be saying, we need a prime minister. And we will have to now formulate again something to make sure there's a prime minister. So if we want all that, why can't we sit down in a bipartisan way and agree that for the sake of Kenya to move, we need a hybrid that works for the country so that the country can tone down. Madam Speaker, then we come to the issue of now the Senate. I think even within the other processes that we have, The lawyers advised us so well, let us not call it even Senate oversight and I don't know national. Let us just call it parliamentary oversight if we want to get it right and not to have ourselves in a lot of questions and then not bringing again back the sibling rivalry that we've always had with Senate. We want to finalize this, let us make it clean. And so because this is not a motion or these are not proposals, this is a message the president wants us to ventilate on it, bring in good ideas and build. And I'm hoping all that we are saying, Madam Speaker, is being picked so that when now the real time will come for all this, we are able to work around. I know the Supreme Court has spoken. They have said we can be, yes, but let us do it then in the right way. They have also given us that time to do it in the right way. They have not come to us and say, just do it for the sake of doing. So, Madam Speaker, as we speak on this matter, and we have to ask also our chairs of JLAC and the ad hoc committee, I hope we are also not in a process to derail so that these things find themselves at each other. I am hoping the process we had started on the joint committee that Parliament had approved on our funds should proceed. And we should stop delaying it and now derailing it in this. It will be very unfair for this House that we were given an opportunity to go and come up on how we can pass the funds that are supposed to support this Parliament and GAF and Senate. And now we have dragged ourselves back on the drawing board. We are about to start another process. Then we will reach a point and say, oh, these processes are the same. We need to merge them. It will be so unfortunate for this House. Can we stand firm with what we started on the issue of our funds? We deal with our funds as we await on this. And this is a process we also need to ask ourselves whether we want to see all these processes together, all these issues being put into one bill. If it goes in one bill, we are going to shoot ourselves. We shall be forced in the end to take all these issues to a referendum. And that will be very sad for this House. So let us also be an arm of legislators that believe in themselves, that you can legislate and things can move. Madam Speaker, you find that today we have left the courts to legislate. The other day, there was just a very interesting ruling where the courts just decided in finality that I think there were clinical doctors or what of Nairobi, they don't need to be paying. They were exempted out of the license that they are normally given by the county. So you wonder, how then are you going to move and how then? So, Madam Speaker, as we speak on this, I am hoping for the last, women will achieve the 2/3 gender rule, but in the right way, and I hope this House will do that. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The member for Baringo North, the Honorable Joseph Makilap.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to start from the onset that the President had very good ideas by submitting this memoranda. But his advisors were not able to separate the beans and the maize. And I want to start with the position of leader of opposition. Madam Speaker, truthfully speaking, this is intended, the purpose of this is intended to cure the business of winner takes it all in an election, especially in a very close election that almost goes 50-50, and that person that commands almost a half of the country is left without participating in the democratic process of our country. Madam Speaker, I agree that this matter could become very difficult it will be difficult in a manner that the current constitution and the current constitution of this country has envisaged that Kenya shall be a presidential system of government. That is why I want to provide logical ideas that you will realize, and members of parliament in this house will realize, that this matter will not be achieved very soon unless some few things are addressed. Madam Speaker, under this system, you can have a president who has won the elections of a country, but it doesn't have the numbers in parliament. It will be a situation where you are a president, but minority in parliament. In that case, if you now say the person who became number 2 becomes the leader of opposition, and the other one who won the election becomes a president, honestly, let's get things right. Even in this last election, and I belong to Kenya Kwanza, but I must be truthful to this nation. If the current president did not work hard to ensure that we have the numbers in this house, whatever working hard means, we had the minority, and yet we won the elections. So could you mean that we have a leader of opposition in the house, and we have a president who has won elections? So this is the complex of our presidential system. So we either choose as a country to go presidential system or we go parliamentary system. For example, Madam Speaker, take for instance, you have a leader of minority. If you want to cure this particular matter, then allow those persons running for president to also contest as members of parliament, so that when they reach here, they can obviously occupy the position of minority leader and majority leader. And many members of parliament in this house do not understand that this Constitution 2010 does not anticipate that a member of parliament is either opposition or government. We are supposed to provide what is called an oversight, a check on government. Madam Speaker, that is why when we were inducted in this house, we were told it is free sitting. What does that free sitting mean? It means each one of us has an opportunity to check and oversight government. So, Madam Speaker, on that matter of leader opposition, there is much to be done. If you want the leader opposition to be in this house, let's change the law so that people running for president and deputy president can actually run as members of parliament or senators, so that they come to the house as leader of minority or leader of majority in the house. But just imagining that leader opposition comes to this house and there is also a minority leader and a majority leader, I mean, it is clashing. It is a clash of the law. It does not require neurosurgeon. It is facts. Let us argue on facts of law, so that we try to address the issue of winner takes it all. The president of this country means it well, but the advisors, the people called lawyers who are supposed to advise and bring order, are not advising it properly. I want to say with a lot of sincerity. Let's now address the matter of oversight funds. We had already created a process, and our process to ensure that CDF and GAF are actually in the Constitution was in the correct track. And we don't want to come back again using this so that this memoranda to achieve what we want. No, let the process of angering CDF, NGCDF, GAF proceed as it was to the end. We shall be able to achieve the results immediately. On the matter of Senate oversight funds, Madam Speaker, I think we should be knowledgeable now. You see, it is not about Senate. It is the people who are trying to sell something to Senate is just actually making a false hope, because it is believed that CDF belongs to members of parliament. CDF does not belong to us. It belongs to the people of Kenya. We are supposed to be the ones oversight in CDF. When we struggle in this house to ensure that CDF are anchored in law, it is not because it is our funds. we are actually oversighting to ensure that there are resources for the people of Kenya to implement programs that are not captured in the fourth schedule, functions that belong to national government that are not being catered at the county government, to be catered by CDF at the constituency level. Madam Speaker, if you create what is called Senate Oversight Fund, then Parliament will also say we also need as National Assembly Oversight Fund. If you want to create an oversight fund, let us call it Parliamentary Oversight Fund, so that everyone who is either in the Senate or in the National Assembly will be able to benefit. And I want to tell you, Madam, why it is clashing. We say senators actually, to what extent should senators oversight the county governments? We have MCAs who are legislators, who are supposed to do a day-to-day oversight of county governments. So at what level do the oversight of senators go? You know, let us face facts as they are. MCAs are supposed to do oversight to the governors and the county executives and the people doing expenditure at the executive at the county level. We at the national level, we oversight the national executive. The senators, to what extent do senators oversight the county governments of this country? These are facts that whether you are in Kenya Kwanza or Azimio, it is facts as they are. Madam Speaker, for the purposes of NGAV, I support 100%, because the women who are in this parliament could also want to address matters that are peculiar. And it will also reach a time that there will be more women in this parliament than men. And we want representation. And they want to actually perform their functions well. The NGAV is not an oversight fund for women. It is a fund that women in parliament are oversighting, trying to address inadequacies on the ground that affects children, affects women, affects people of all nature. Madam Speaker, those are facts. On the issue of two-third gender rule, Madam Speaker, I want us to be alive to Article 38. Every Kenyan has a right, Bill of Rights. Do we then want to go for referendum? Because anything on Bill of Rights, you will have to go to a referendum. It will not go to a parliamentary initiative. What does that mean? We don't want to do the bing-bong business of the other day, saying we don't want what was popularly called the thing that was rejected. This the change of the constitution. So, Madam Speaker, to address the gender rule in this house, it must be addressed outside the confines of the constitution through articles of parliament within the confines of IPC and political parties of Kenya. Madam Speaker, I think the people that this matter will be placed, we need to sit down as a nation to realign so that it will be a win-win for Kenya, not again messing up the constitution that we came in 2010. Madam Speaker, the President has very good intentions, but we need to realign, adjust to fit the system. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Very well. The Honorable Mayaka Irene, nominated member.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I just want to give my remarks and comments to what, in my view, is an opinion from the President and proposal, because I do not want to imagine that this is at the beginning of a process of initiating a constitutional changes coming from him. Madam Speaker, first of all, let me just say, because we've had in this House very many members castigating what Azimio has been doing in terms of the people barazas, because there is no rule in this country that says that you cannot have courts of public opinion when you're speaking to the people of Kenya. Whether or not the office of the official opposition is there or not, now nobody prevents anyone from speaking to the people of Kenya. Madam Speaker, if I can just begin to give my comments to the President's memo Because in my view, I think what the president did is that he took the BBI proposal and looked through it, and he really liked what he saw and decided that he also wants to make an opinion on it, which I do not fault him for that, because some of the things that he mentioned here that were in the BBI were fantastic suggestions that would put this country at a very good place. Madam Speaker, on the two-third gender rule, which is actually something that is already on Article 81B, but the reason why this has never been properly implemented is because the article does not give the meat and specifics of how this should be done in a proper way. Mr. Speaker, because now it's Mr. Speaker, in my view, what I think ought to be done is that we need to have a holistic review of this constitution. The other day we were in Mombasa, and one of the clerk assistants from Canada did give us an example of a compelling political process that they have in their country, where political parties are made to actually select and put aside constituencies specific for women, so that in that way you're able to make sure that the two-third gender is achieved. This is one of the ways that we should actually be looking at resolving this issue. Because, Mr. Speaker, we have had the affirmative action, women coming through the affirmative action, who have been fantastic examples, who have gone on to not only get elected, but others have even gone on to be elected as governor, like, for example, Her Excellency Cecile Mbarire, Millie Mabona, Martha, just to name but a few. And I like the fact that some of our male colleagues are recognizing the fact that soon it will be the male child who will actually be fighting for this two-third gender, because as things are going, Mr. Speaker, the female gender is really capturing these seats very fast. We have shown good examples out there, and people are electing women even more. Mr. Speaker, if I can just give my comments on the official opposition. Again, back to the BBI. The spirit behind BBI was that as a country, we should never have a situation where the winner takes all. And one of the things that it advocated for is that not only should we have the office of the official opposition budgeted for as well, but that we should also have a shadow cabinet. What the president is proposing right now, ideally, as per the courts that rule that these initiatives cannot come from the president, which I do not agree with, even though we respect the decision of the court, I think this is a matter that should also be taken back and prosecuted through a public participation decision. It cannot come through the presidency. And as I said, these are his ideas, his proposals, which are rightful, but this is not the process that should ideally be followed. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the issue of ministers coming here for questioning, again, I agree with those members who said that this will end up rendering our committees to be irrelevant, because part of the work of the committees that they do is for them to be able to question ministers, for ministers to appear before them. If we start bringing the ministers here, then the committees become irrelevant. Again, back to BBI. BBI's proposal was that 50% of the ministers that we do have ought to be members of parliament. Through this process, it would have been so much easier for us to be able to question ministers and for them to be able to be held accountable. This other process that the president is proposing, in my view, I think it's a backdoor and a shortcut towards bringing back BBI into parliament, which should not be the case. Mr. Speaker, on the oversight fund, again, I agree with my fellow colleagues that ideally this should be a parliamentary oversight fund. Our colleagues here brought a very good motion, which was committed to a committee that is reviewing it, and I think that's the process we should follow, because there are proposals on Article 24A to D, which covers the NGCDF, the NGAF fund, and the additional fund on a special fund, including the oversight fund, is something that we should actually give a priority to make sure that it is fully enacted into law, so that then this becomes a parliamentary oversight fund that covers both the Senate and the National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, therefore, what I'd just like to say as I conclude is that as a house, we should not be encouraging having such very pertinent constitutional reforms coming through opinions and memos, because we will be setting a very dangerous precedence in this country. This ought to follow the right procedure. And therefore, even as the JLAC committee members then proceed to have a look at this matter, I want to encourage them. It doesn't matter whether you're from the Kenya Kwanza side or the Azimio side, do the right thing, set the right precedence, because as my good senior once said, Honorable now Governor Orengo, is that the government eats its own children, and this will one day eat you if you're not careful with it. I submit.
The Honorable Ndindi Njoro, Chair of the Budget and Appropriations Committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and for giving me this opportunity to give my views in regards to the communication by the President. And as you said before, this is a general debate. We are just giving our views. There is no voting yet. And I'll talk about just a few issues. Number one, I am very elated by the President's view, which corresponds with the view of this House, that CDF is so important an institution and a fund that it can no longer be left hanging to the whims of the people. And especially it cannot be left to be bullied from all sides by people who actually do not understand the importance of this fund insofar as the Kenyan people are concerned. NGCDF is not an MP's kitty. NGCDF is a community fund, and it has been a very helpful and far-reaching fund in this country. Mr. Speaker, many countries actually have come to benchmark and also implemented such a program like the one we run in this country. And if you go across every corner of this country, the many projects that we see that are complete, that the Kenyan people are already getting value from them, majority of them are NGCDF sponsored. In fact, Mr. Speaker, if you go around the country, you could hardly identify a stored project that is funded by NGCDF, because the processes are very thorough, and especially the monies that are put aside for development that fund is protected, and only 5% is actually left for other things other than development. That is the recurrent expenditure of the office that we call admin. Mr. Speaker, today I came to this House late because I was in Kiharu yesterday and today, and I'm still talking about NGCDF. We have been able to launch a program we are calling Kiharu Masomo Bora program, which is covering all our day schools in Kiharu. In total, 14,000 of them, 14,000 learners, and 60 institutions, sorry. It is covering 60 institutions and 14,000 learners in our day schools. And through NGCDF, we have been able to optimize the fees, the requirements of the school, and the money that is required, to the point where we have been able to scale down the fees payable by the parents per student to only 1,000 per term. Only 1,000 per term, Mr. Speaker. And the way we have done this is to optimize the supplies that schools get, so that if we pull CDF money and resources together, then we are able to aggregate all the supplies in terms of, for example, stationery and other educational needs, and also meals. Out of only that 1,000, because of the help of Kiharu NGCDF and other stakeholders, Mr. Speaker, all the learners will be able to take 10 o'clock tea or uji in school. They'll be able to get lunch. Lunch which is actually not just githeri every day, but only 3 days githeri and 3 days rice. And we are also providing lunch, including 10 o'clock meal, uji or tea, even on Saturdays, so that all the learners can remain in school actually 6 days a week. I'm talking about Kiharu because this is an NGCDF project, Mr. Speaker. And there are many such kind of projects across the country where, because of the thorough oversight by these members of this House, that these monies are able to reach to the corners where actually the people need government support and government resources. And therefore, putting NGCDF and anchoring the same in the Constitution is a very noble cause, because some of the projects that we undertake, like the one I've just talked about, like Kiharu Masomobora program, will need to be sustainable. And for sustainability of the NGCDF programs and projects, then we need to be sure that this kitty is here for posterity for many years to come, because the kind of plans we do are not just plans for today, but plans for tomorrow and the other day and next year and to the future. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, I want to say something about Senate Oversight Fund. Mr. Speaker, I have a privilege to be serving this House and the Kenyan people in the Budget Committee. We appropriate over 370 billion Kenya shillings that goes to our counties. And Mr. Speaker, some of these monies can unlock our local economies, our village economies, our taxonomies across all counties if these funds are expended in a manner that will stimulate the economy. But unfortunately, the bulk of this money goes into paying salaries and goes into paying recurrents, the ones that survive after most of it, of course, takes off through the leadership. Mr. Speaker, we need men and women who will be able to be the eyes of Kenyans in regards to how counties expend this public money. And therefore, it will go a long way into giving our senators enough strength in terms of funds to move around, to question, to do all manner of audit. Not the audit in terms of the books, but audit in terms of the projects conducted or undertaken by counties, even in regards to the value for money, and in regards to the use in terms of how these programs help the Kenyan people. And therefore, it is good for us to extend this fund to the senators. They are doing a very good job. We need to support them so that they are able to look after the bulk of the money, close to 400 billion, that we said to our counties. In fact, if county monies were able to be expended the way we do CDF, Mr. Speaker, the national government would be left with very little to do, because this is so much money in our villages, supporting education, supporting healthcare, supporting all other functions that we conduct, and also that would be conducted by the county governments. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, it is a good thing that we support our senators, give them the tools they need to conduct thorough oversight to our counties, Mr. Speaker, because it is important. Mr. Speaker, the issue of two-thirds gender rule and the other issue about the office of the leader of opposition, I want to talk broadly about the two in regards to democracy. Mr. Speaker, our democracy has come from far, and we are growing, we are becoming a champion in the region. And looking back, Mr. Speaker, even to the inception of democracy itself, the democracies that actually are anchored properly are democracies that grew after countries developed state machinery or bureaucracy, and therefore democracy came after the state actually existed. And countries that actually have democracy coming before the state, they never experience stability. But countries that experience first a strong bureaucracy, a strong state, then democracy comes to check, they usually thrive. And Mr. Speaker, you cannot check a state that does not exist. And therefore it is important, even as we talk about strengthening our democracy through the two issues that the President communicated, that we realize that for a democracy to thrive, a state needs to be strong, number one, but also number two, for us to move out of the politics of static, toxic identity, we need to create other fluid identities. Currently, our politics is domiciled on the basis of tribe and ethnicity, which is toxic, and there is no movement. But when we create industrialization, we create a good economy, Mr. Speaker, Then we have other identities, like where we work. We create other identities, like the level of education, which is fluid because anyone can move from this area to the other in terms of identities. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I think we are in the right direction by first checking on our economy so that even as we build on that in terms of governance, then our democracy will be premised on an economy that drives, and the people who are already engaged in being active agents of our economy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I submit.
Honorable Dindi Njoro, I want to call upon all MPs who are coming the first time to visit Kiaru and see by themselves what CDF is doing for Kiaru people under your oversight. And I think as a person who has seen it, I know it is good. The gentleman from Nyando, the Honorable Jared Okello.
I thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Allow me from the outset to welcome back my colleagues and the Office of the Speaker and the Secretariat in general, having been at home during our recess for the last 2 months. On the same breath, Honorable Speaker, allow me to express our collective frustration and resentment as a House on this matter of NGCDF. Before we went home for our recess, Honorable Speaker, the CS Treasury did make an undertaking that from the 9th day of December 2022, 2 billion shillings were to be expended to our accounts every week, which by now, Honorable Speaker, our accounts should be having, every individual constituency account should be having 80 million shillings, Honorable Speaker. The Cabinet Secretary has walked on all the promises, walked back on all the promises he has made, and up to until the time we showed up in Mombasa during our induction and staged a small go-slow, we had not received anything, Honorable Speaker. This House is a co-equal branch of government with the executive and together with the judiciary. This House has gone into lengths to midwife and legislate pieces from the executive without any delay or any ordinary delay. But here we are, executive makes promises to us that are never respected, Honorable Speaker. Today, they will be coming out asking us to pass the supplementary budget, number 1, supplementary budget 1 of 2022-2023. I want to ask this House to refuse to pass this supplementary budget until the entire NGCDF monies are wired into our accounts. Why do I say this? Most of our children who solely depend on the bursaries are still holed up at homes without any recourse. And we are here passing every piece of legislation and every agenda from the executive. I want this House to stand strong and refuse this supplementary budget until all the monies are submitted. Back to the course, Honorable Speaker. There are 4 issues that have been raised by William Samoei Ruto as regards the memorandum to the Speaker of the National Assembly. And that is on oversight, Office of the Official Opposition, NGCDF, and the gender representation, Honorable Speaker. Now, if you read Article 255 of our Constitution, apart from the NGCDF, all these must go through a referendum. All of them, Honorable Speaker. And NGCDF, as you did allude to, Honorable Speaker, during your contribution, there is nothing illegal about NGCDF. There is nothing unconstitutional about the NGCDF Act of 2015. But we still want to strive to anchor it in law so that it can be solidified in a way that no court in this republic would once again tinker with it or throw it out or disturb it, as we have seen in the recent past, Honorable Speaker. So I'm very much afraid that if we carry out an omnibus legislation and include NGCDF in the proposals as advanced by the President, then the NGCDF as an act may face, the wrath together with all these three that have been presented by the President. And therefore, I ask that let us decipher issues. If it is about NGCDF, let it be a stand-alone advancement of proposed legislation. Let us not lump it up with the rest that probably are likely to face a problem with the judiciary branch of our government, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, I would ask that even as JLAC retreats to look into this, let NGCDF be a stand-alone. Let it not be together with the rest, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, it shouldn't be lost on us that why BBI's fate died at the Supreme Court is because the former President, Uhuru Kenyatta, did gazette a team that was going around the country to collect views as far as changing certain constitutional issues happened then. And therefore, the mere fact that the President gazetted that team, the entire BBI died in the hands of the 7 judges. Now, President Uhuru only gazetted and did not do anything else. We have been invited by William RUTO by way of a letter to the Speaker of the National Assembly. And not only that he has written a letter, he has included a memorandum, and he has also suggested areas where these changes should be made. I'm very much afraid that if this goes before a court of law, and indeed it will, through the civic society or the civil society, this thing will be dead on arrival, just because President RUTO is putting his hands in the changes of our Constitution, Honorable Speaker. And we also need to see the amendments for what they are. There has been a proposal to bring in cabinet secretaries in this House. What does that therefore mean? That the work of oversight committees are going to be dead. Because what will be the role of PSC? What will be the role of PIC? If those cabinet secretaries can personally present themselves before this House, Honorable Speaker. And this is an elaborate process of killing the role of the opposition. You do understand that when you talk about PIC, when you talk about PSC, and all the oversight committees, it is only the opposition that occupy and dominate these committees, Honorable Speaker. And by so killing these oversight committees, you inevitably kill the opposition. So on this other hand, we are being conned to get into this trap so that we can allow ministers to come here, killing the oversight roles, but at the same time we are told, by the way, we also need the role of official opposition leader in the House. I mean, I think we are smarter than that, Honorable Speaker, to be brought into this conundrum. Honorable Speaker, this is something that will go before the Republic, and Kenyans will have to voice their concerns on this matter. I do not know how prepared Kenyans are to increase 100 female gender into this House, 100 of them, and how that feeds into the national budget at a time when the country is suffering, and not less than a cabinet secretary in charge of Treasury has come out to say this country is broke. And you are also saying at the same time that let us bring in 100 more women into the National Assembly. Honorable Speaker, in order to cure this, because again, it is important that this House is balanced, why can't we compel political parties that during their nomination processes have equal number of women as those of men inside this House, so that at the end of the day, we do not lump up more additional budgets into the House, but only cure the number of women to be brought into this House by way of political parties, Honorable Speaker. And by that, we are going to adhere to the law, and we are going to sidestep this idea of pumping in additional 10 billion shillings into the budget of this National Assembly or of the Senate, Honorable Speaker. And with that, I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. The Honorable David Gikaria, the person under whose charge our environment is protected.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and my good friend, Honorable Kaluma. First of all, Honorable Speaker, I rise to support this motion. And Honorable Speaker, when you're giving your remarks or you're giving your contributions, Honorable Speaker, I really followed keenly. And to some extent, you did convince me on one of the aspects as to what you alluded to, the fact that we need to look at these things critically so that, again, it doesn't land in the courts. And again, it is thrown out just because of a few legal technicalities. Honorable Speaker, the other thing that I agree with you is that you did say that we look, this is only, the President is inviting us to give our views on what he thinks. And it's not a bill. It's just a request by the President. Look at this. And of course, our President is a gentleman. He's not Mr. Know-it-all. He will pick a few things from you. He'll pick a few things from me. The next, he'll pick a few from Beatrice and others. And he will say yes to the fact that if we are actually true in a presidential system, then how do you bring in opposition in Parliament? And this is something that the President is going to look critically into those things and be able to make a decision by the time now when it comes to the actual legislation. The last thing that I also agree with you, Honorable Speaker, is that we should look at this thing devoid of politics. Let us avoid politics when you are discussing this so that you can be able, because sometimes we play to the gallery, we forget about what this House is meant to do. And I totally agree with you that, Honorable Speaker, we need to look at this request devoid of politics so that we can be able to give our best. Did the President mean well when he made this request and through a memorandum? And I would say yes. He meant well for this country. He has seen what is ailing this country. It doesn't matter. He has just given us a proposal. It is for us now to improve on what he has given us so that we can be able to achieve what he intends to bring to this country. Thirdly, the third is that the President himself has checked and seen what is ailing this country, and he wants to bring those changes so that we can be able to. But the first thing that, Honorable Speaker, I want to address is, and it has been said here by different speakers, as to whether we need to have a referendum. Honorable Speaker, and I've learned a lot from you, from Honorable Otiende and others, is that, Honorable Speaker, if you look at Article 255, Article 255 gives us the amendment of this Constitution. And, Honorable Speaker, it says a proposed amendment to this Constitution shall be enacted in accordance with Article 256, which I think it is through Parliament, or 257, which is a referendum, and approved in accordance with Clause 2 by a referendum, where it gives the procedure of what collect 25%, some millions of signatures, things like that. If the amendment relates in any of the following mandates. And Honorable Speaker, this is where we really need to look at as members of Parliament. so that we also look at, and we also, even as we are talking, Honorable Speaker, this country has become a country of politics almost every other day. That we have just finished. Again, now we need to be, so that again we try to see, do we go the parliamentary way so that we avoid the whole of politics that comes with that in a referendum. Honorable Speaker, one of the issues that has to go for a referendum is that if it touches on the supremacy of this Constitution, and that is under 255(1)(a). 2, the territories, of course. I'm going to look at C, the sovereignty of the people. D, the national values and principles of governance, referred in Article 10, 2A to D. Honorable Speaker, I'm not going to bring that. E, the Bill of Rights. F, the terms of office of the President. G, the independence of the judiciary, and it goes on. The functions of Parliament. I, the objects, principle, and structure of devolved government, and it goes on and it goes on. Honorable Speaker, it is important for us to look at if this proposed will need to go to a referendum or we need to address and do the amendments here. And those are the critical issues that we need to look at. Secondly, Article, of course, 255(2) gives the process of how a referendum should be undertaken. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, what we need to ask ourselves is that as the President is doing this, we go back to the Constitution again, Honorable Speaker, and we look at the authority of the President. That is enshrined in this Constitution. We look at also the functions of the President. And lastly, Honorable Speaker, we look at the decisions of the President. Again, these are going to inform us as we look at what the President has proposed and whether he is, he's legislating or whether it is also a requirement by law that he can be able to do what he has just done. And Honorable Speaker, if we look at Article 131, Honorable Speaker, Article 131, Article 131(1)(e) is that the President, that is Article 131, says the President, and E says is a symbol of national unity. Is he doing this for purposes of individual gains or as a symbol of to bring a national unity? Yes, Honorable Speaker, I think that is what the President is doing. If we look at the same Article 131(2)(c), Honorable Speaker, it says that the President shall promote and enhance the unity of this nation. And again, Honorable Speaker, when I look at the proposals that he has brought, all the proposals are there. That is exactly what the President has been given a mandate by this Constitution to be able to undertake. And those are the things at the end of the day is what we will be checking so that we can be able to. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, is Article 132, and those are the functions of the President. And what is this, the function of the President? Under Article 132(1)(c), the President shall, and it says once in a year. Let me go to the particular one where I want to refer, is Article 132(1)(c) subclause 1, or Roman 1, sorry. And it says once a year, the President report in an address to the nation on all the measures taken and the progress achieved in realization of the national values referred to. And that is also a function that, and has the President done that, Honorable Speaker? Yes, that is what has been done, Honorable Speaker. If you look at Article 132(2)(b), and it says the President shall nominate and with the approval of the National Assembly, appoint any and dismiss Article 132(2)B is the Attorney General in accordance with Article 152. And what is the Attorney General's function? Is to advise, is a legal advisor to government and the President. And I doubt whether the Attorney General has not done his part to be able to give the President that aspect of legislation. And lastly, Honorable Speaker, is 132(4), where it says, Honorable Speaker,
Honorable David Gikaria, thank you for ending your presentations. You are reminding me of the late Honorable William Chepkut, who would recite all those provisions without reference. Would we have the gentleman from Kitutu Masaba, the Honorable Clive Gesario?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to also contribute to these proposals by the President. Mr. Speaker, I will start with the most touching element here, which is the NGCDF. All speakers who've spoken here today have spoken on the importance of NGCDF. We'll continue to reiterate that this is not money for members of parliament. We are actually here as representatives of constituencies, and while we stand to speak here, we are speaking on behalf of our NGCDF committees back in the constituencies. We are here to ensure that those committees and the fund managers have funds to provide services to the constituents. So having these in the Constitution is priority. And we thank the President for also believing in the same, that the NGCDF committees need these monies in their accounts. The government or Treasury did promise to be releasing 2 billion weekly. That was in December. Actually, it was in November. To date, only 10 billion has been released. The financial year is coming to a close. We should stand firm as a house for the sake of our constituents. For the Senate oversight, we've been having the new constitution in force for the last 10 years. I would just like to ask whether this is a new role or it has been there for the last 10 years for the senators, for us to decide on how to frame it. Because if you are going to say it's an oversight, the question will be, haven't senators been oversighting the counties or not? The NGAF goes without saying. It plays a key role. CDF, NGCDF alone cannot touch everyone. There are some elements, key elements, that it leaves. The vulnerables, the women, and the young girls. Matters that are close to our women. We need to let them be handled by the women. So as we ensure the NGCDF is in the Constitution, GAF cannot be left behind. Implementation of the 2/3 gender rule. This is a dicey one. We have daughters, we are husbands, we know the importance of having women in leadership and in all positions to help shape this country. But how we reach there, we need to be extremely careful. We need our girls also to grow up knowing that they can be competitive. I would like to look at it differently, maybe. Instead of saying we come nominate them, why not say on the women rep position, the first 47 go through, we look in the house what's the difference, and then the top countrywide in the balance, fits in the balance and balances the equation. That way, our girls will grow up knowing that it's not easy and they are competitive. Academically, currently in schools, girls are almost outshining the boys. Let's not make it any difference out here. That is the only way we'll have our daughters fit in this society without thinking they're getting handouts. The position of leader of opposition, as many have said, we are a presidential system. We have to make our choices. Either hybrid, let even those contesting for presidency contest for parliament. When the one who wins then can resign, and the one who loses takes his official role as the leader of opposition in the House. As we sit here, I've listened to leader of majority, sometimes making jokes about this side. We meeting the people is part of our role. This house, you can't sit that side and say you're in government. No, you're in parliament. All legislators are here to play their roles. Representation, legislation, and oversight. Our leader of majority, Kimani Ichung'wah, should actually be our leader in ensuring that the government performs in our role of oversight. There is no responsibility of him coming here to defend the executive. He should ensure that the executive delivers on the mandate. He actually should not even be called leader of majority. He should be called the leader of the House. But the moment we start here and we are throwing rocks back and forth, that as we are meeting the people out there, then we'll say it's the way we would like to choose it. We can meet the people in the markets. We can also arrange prayer meetings. They are all meetings meeting the people. The agenda is the same. So, the leader of official opposition in the current setting of the Constitution has no place. And there's no way we are going to sneak it in. Parliament oversight on executive, as one speaker said here, it will be a tragedy that one day the government wins, the president wins, has a minority in the House, and then we've said his ministers to be brought here. He will need a lot of oxygen out there to resuscitate them. They will literally be lynched. That is the role of committees, and we need to leave it there. Unless we say we want to do away with committees, we have no business having cabinet secretaries here. The committees are powerful enough they are representative enough to represent this House. With the numbers in this House, you will never have enough time to even interrogate a minister. So the best way is let the ministers be dealt with at our departmental levels. There are no shortcuts. If these are to come into the floor of the House, let them come as separate bills. So that if either falls on the way, let it fall by itself. Otherwise, we risk, if we bring all this together, NGCDF will be on its deathbed. Something we as parliamentarians should not agree to, should not allow. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Is Honorable Joseph Emate, MP for Turkana Central, in the House? Not there. Give me Honorable Dido Raso, the Vice Chair of the Committee on Administration and Internal Affairs.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I rise to support this memorandum by His Excellency the President. From the onset, I want to say that Kenya is a unitary state, and the President is the head of this state. By dint of the Constitution, the President is the most powerful person in the land. Those powers, it is we, the people of Kenya, who have given him. He can use his powers to get things done by hubris, or he can maneuver his way to get things done. But, Honorable Speaker, this President, who himself has been a member of the National Assembly, representing Eldoret North for many years, has decided to approach the House to tell this House that, honorable members, I think there's lacuna in our Constitution, that we need to think differently. We need to get things done. That is attempting to approach this House to have a conversation. And the conversation before us, as my honorable colleague who just spoke before me talked about the National Government Constituency Development Fund. He tried to extol at length how useful this fund is, the importance of this fund, that without the CDF, that we as members of parliament representing single constituencies are sitting lame ducks. So for that reason, I think it is incumbent upon us that you cannot have your cake and eat it. The President has touched on the National Government Affirmative Action Fund. The honorable ladies in this House, they will approach their constituents, much larger than single constituency that many of us in this House represent. And a lot is expected of them, including the CDF bursaries, including taking mothers and fathers to hospital, including taking orphans to schools, and even buying wheelchairs sometimes. That takes a lot of resources, and it calls for a lot of strengthening of that particular office if we really must make something out of it. Honorable Speaker, to fix the conundrum of CDF, what the President has said, guys, let us put it in the Constitution so that the vicious litigants year in, year out will not be taking Parliament to courts. The same thing, Honorable Speaker, on the issue of the Senate Oversight Fund. The senators of Kenya oversight 47 counties that are annually given about 370 billion shillings. That is a lot of money. Without oversight, without anybody raising a finger, that appears to be money going down the drain. We all come from counties that are year in, year out, are raking in billions, but you don't see where that money goes. Somebody must look at these resources and tell the citizenry that here something is disappearing. In the absence of giving the senators those powers to go around and engage with both the county government and the citizenry, then I think we are throwing good money after bad money. And it must stop somewhere. And the only way this can be stopped is by senators not going to kneel down to the governors, but by them appearing to be the watchkeepers on behalf of Parliament. Honorable Speaker, on the issue of gender, for those of us who have been long enough in this August House, our women colleagues have approached us severally to actually talk about this issue of two-thirds gender. But we have sat on our hands. And yet, the reason why today we have increasing numbers of women members of Parliament is because we have given the few, through affirmative action, the hands upon which they will be able to stretch the muscles of other young women leaders. Unless this is entrenched, unless we look for formula to get enough women to be in this House, then I think it will not be possible for them to get the chance to occupy the highest offices in this land. So that we don't appear to be giving women favors or like handouts, let them be given opportunity to exercise their leadership in this House. I think the thinking that the President has brought on board is noble, it is doable. I think as a House, we must rise to the occasion. Finally, Honorable Speaker, the issue of leader of opposition. People can deny it, but the House or a country without opposition, the government can tend to do what we saw happening after the handshake. Initially, we had a very strong and robust opposition in the last Parliament. But as soon as there was a handshake, the opposition was killed. And the government of the day did whatever they wanted to do with hubris and despotic approach to many issues. And for that reason, I think when we borrow from other jurisdictions, and we do that from the US, from the UK, and we have seen that it is the opposition that puts the government on its toes. And I think we as a House must actually for once put aside our political philosophies that sometimes is not Kenyan, the different sides of the divide, borrow different philosophies, but we do what is good for this country. And finally, I said the ministers appearing before the House. Severally, the chairmen have been coming to the House with the statements and reports. And we ourselves have been challenging those members to the extent that we tell them that you guys are just messengers. You will not be able to convince us. Now, the president is saying, guys, I want to give you my ministers to come and respond to your questions. And we are saying no. So sometimes we must ask ourselves, what is it that we really want as a House? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, honorable members. We have barely less than 30 minutes to go. So I want to encourage those of you who are going to get time to be as targeted as Honorable Dido Raso. If you can, be done within less than 10 minutes, be done so that colleagues get the time. The Honorable Beatrice Kimei, the gentle lady from Kericho County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this general debate on the proposal by His Excellency, the President of Parliament, to consider amending the Constitution. And Mr. Speaker, many members have spoken to the same, and I want to start by appreciating what the members have said. And constitutional amendment is not something new. In Kenya, the first Kenyan constitution has been amended severally. Even America, they have amended their constitution over around 27 times. India, over 90 times. Mr. Speaker, it shows that the importance of amending the constitution is actually to adjust provisions that are inadequate. And to add to that, Mr. Speaker, it shows that amendments are necessary to correct the national weaknesses and, of course, to adapt the changes that come with it. In this case, Mr. Speaker, just the way other members have spoken, there was the PPI that, of course, had some good part of it. And I remember the president looked at it. He also spoke to it and said there are good side of the PPI and there are those areas that needs to be corrected. However, it never saw the light of the day. So in this case, Mr. Speaker, I want to, in a very special way, appreciate the fact that it is coming to us to look and to speak to it. Mr. Speaker, sir, the 4 issues that His Excellency forwarded to us to speak to are very important. Maybe to start with is the NGCDF and the GAF. Mr. Speaker, I want to appreciate the members who have been here before. They have worked hard using the NGCDF and GAF. And Mr. Speaker, Honorable Ndidi Nyoro, in a few minutes, gave us what is done with the NGCDF. I want to congratulate him for that and the many other members. However, I was only in a way unhappy and disappointed that he never mentioned the GAF, which is actually a national government affirmative action fund. But I appreciate the members who have spoken to it. Mr. Speaker, when we were in Mombasa, you realize that we didn't have the minority, the majority, the opposition, and the government. All of us spoke to this very, very important, the important funds. Because even now, Mr. Speaker, back in the counties and in the constituencies, our children, others have gone to school, others are waiting for the bursaries. So this is very, very important. So when the president brought this one in to be anchored in the Constitution, it has meaning, and will not be having people going to court against it, will not be having people speaking against it, and with this knowledge that NGC, Dev and GAF, members of parliament who are here, are just doing the oversight role. And I wish Honorable Oundo was here so that I would speak to him and let him know that women reps are also members of parliament, because he talked of MPs and women reps. We are also members of parliament. Now, Mr. Speaker, NGC, DF and GAF has done so much. The only difference is that for the women reps being given the GAF, which is slightly less than 7 million per constituency, while for the MPs it is over 130, I believe so. But still, even with that, it has done so much. We've spoken to widows, single mothers, orphans, elderly, and even children, fighting the gender-based violence, which is not only affecting girls and women, it is also affecting boys and men, and we are speaking to that. So I want to support this, that NGC, DF and GAF should actually be anchored in the law. Same to the Senate Oversight Fund. I support it, Mr. Speaker. Why am I saying so? If you look very keenly, you will realize that people who go to Senate, to what I normally hear from the village, are people who already, they are satisfied, they already have what they needed, because they say there's no money in the Senate, so, and then they do so much of oversight. So I also support that, Mr. Speaker. Now, coming to the gender, the two-third gender rule. We waited in the last parliament, the 12th parliament, for members to pass it. The unfortunate part of it is that it was not passed. And this time, I've just listened to members. Others are not sure of what the president has. He actually was speaking to gender rule, what it means. From what I understand, of course I know it will still come to the House. It's not that we will have many, many members who are actually just to fill in the space. But now we will not have extra members. That is why some members were talking of, we don't want to have 10 billion. It is not that, Mr. Speaker. If we have 47 members and the top up from nomination should come from the gender that is less. And this does not mean it is only the women. I don't know why there's this misunderstanding that when we talk of the two-third gender, it is talking about women. We are not lesser. It is only that from the past, people didn't understand who women are and their ability. But now, I want even to appreciate that we have the CSS, the PSS, and the many MPs, senators, and all that, leaders, women leaders. So with time, people would understand. Mr. Speaker, it is very interesting that even back and in our constituencies and counties, people say, let's have the seat for women, that is the women's woman rep seat, and then the others are for men. But let people understand, women are also leaders. So I will appreciate when this one is also anchored in the Constitution. It will give women strength. And don't forget, Mr. Speaker, we have also been speaking and talking about the boy child. At the moment, as members have said, and even me, I know, girls are working very hard in schools. Even when the results are out, girls are doing good and they are doing well. We have boys who need to be mentored, who needs to be encouraged. And in future, we do not know which gender is actually supposed to be assisted. That is the more reason why this two-third gender rule should actually be upheld in the Constitution. Now, having the leader of opposition being actually appreciated and having an office, I support it very strongly. Having a strong opposition is key, Mr. Speaker. At least to give checks and balances in the functioning of the government. And even to support this one more, to give constructive criticisms, a criticism of the government, the policies, the plans, the bills, the laws, and the programs of the government. And even to make the government work for the people, to support the social welfare, and to do good to the public. So having an opposition leader, having that honorable office is key. And I believe with this, people will not be talking of handshake, people will not be talking of mkatenusu, people will not be against when a leader comes out to go to the public and maybe to harass us, people will not be saying it is because they are looking for this. They will have their honorable place, maybe in parliament, and even in this case, it will be good for them. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I want to say the CSS being in the House is not a bad idea. However, as much as maybe we have committees, there are things that we may not speak to, we may not have enough time, but we will want to listen more of what the President has in this. Some of us may not even know up to the end of the 5 years who the CS was, who the PS was, we may not know their ability.
Is Honorable Joses Lelmengit, the gentleman representing Mgwen in the House. Okay, then let us have the Honorable John Gitonga Manyata for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Let me say I'm privileged to give my opinion on this memorandum. And Honorable Speaker, I will not waste any time. I'll go straight to my thoughts. Number one, I want to actually say the President has conjured a very good debate, a debate that is enriching what we are supposed to be doing in this House. And Honorable Speaker, the issues that the President has brought across in this House are issues that are not to his benefit. As a matter of fact, I'm looking at all these issues. I see them benefiting this House, and some benefiting even his opponent, who he competed with in the last election. Honorable Speaker, the issue of two-thirds gender rule is an issue that has been very pertinent in the debate in this country. And Honorable Speaker, while you gave your submission, I was very keen on your opinion on solving this issue. And I want to say that, yes, this issue is in the Constitution. And so there is a need to know how to solve it. It is not an issue that cannot be solved. But the formula the President is bringing is a formula that can actually solve this thing once and for all. Honorable Speaker, it is not a wonder if we have the current CJ giving the same declaration Maraga gave a few years ago, that the government should be dissolved. And the more we sit on this issue, Honorable Speaker, we are losing, and we are actually not getting to where we are supposed to get as the 13th Parliament. And I feel this Parliament has what it takes to look at these recommendations by the President and come up with something that can be able to help the two-thirds gender rule to be finalized one and for all. And we don't even have to talk much, because we know the gender rule is a rule that can apply both ways. It is important to note that the increase that we are talking about of the few members of Parliament will actually remove us from a very huge quagmire that this country has on it being constitutionally okay as of right now. And if we do that, then I know, Honorable Speaker, we'll be able to ensure that the next election, now we can put in the measures that the political parties can be able to actually implement. On the issue of CDF, Honorable Speaker, I thought I have more minutes. On the issue of CDF, Honorable Speaker, it is important to note that right now we are in a big challenge that our kids are at home and many parents are actually reeling in trouble because their kids are not yet in school. Honorable Speaker, the issue of putting CDF and GAF in the Constitution will make it solid that nobody can joke with that fund, and I fully support that recommendation. Although it's important to note that I wouldn't like to put all these things together, that one fails and the other one does not cannot be able to move.
Thank you very much, Honorable Gitonga. The gentle lady from Moiben constituency, the Honorable Phyllis Bartow. Again, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I rise on behalf of the people of Moiben constituency to make my pronunciation on the memoranda by His Excellency, the President, Dr. William Samoei RUTO. Mr. Speaker, I want to speak on two issues, on the gender rule and on the NCDF being enshrined in the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, these issues which the President has brought to the House for us to debate are very important. Reason, this is a President who has been a former member of Parliament, ranking for that matter. He has rose through other ranks to become the Deputy President and to be the President of Kenya as at present. So it means he has a lot of experience, a lot of insights on giving the directionality on what we need to borrow. Mr. Speaker, the issue of NCDF being entrenched in the Constitution is very important. Kenyans are very litigious. We like rushing to court, even on issues which are not, even to put bottlenecks on issues which are important to the nation. For example, this NCDF, at the moment, we have a case in court. We are not even able to dispense any or to do any development at our constituencies because the money which has been dispensed is a very small percentage. It took the intervention of members of Parliament when they went for the retreat in Mombasa to raise their voices for the executive to decide whether they want to give it or not and give it in piecemeals. Up to now, what we have is very little. The financial year is coming to an end. So it is very important that we entrench this in the Constitution, the GAV, and the oversight fund for the senators, because they also need to be empowered. To be able to lead people, you must have the capacity, and you have to be well empowered for you to serve. So I think it is very important, and I know even if we went for public participation, Kenyans are very ready to give a nod to this GAV, NCDF, Senate Oversight Fund, because they know the importance. They felt, they have seen this fund transforming their lives. And I want to underscore the fact that it is not money for the member of Parliament. In fact, if anything, there is nowhere where that money gets to the hand of a member of Parliament. It is for the people to develop and to transform the lives of the people. So I think it should be done expeditiously so that it is stabilized. On the issue of gender, to that gender rule, this conversation has come of age. Since the times of Beijing until now, we are still having debates on gender. We are still not meeting the third gender rule. Last time when we went to Mombasa for induction, we were with colleagues from all parts of the world, from Tanzania, from South Africa, and even outside Africa, and they gave testimonies of how they are ahead. They have met the two-third gender rule. But for us in Kenya, we are still struggling. It's high time we entrench this in the Constitution and do it for final so that we move and go to address other issues other than going round and round dealing with the same issue. My time is up and I can end there, Mr. Speaker, because I had only indicated I was making my pronouncement on 2 issues. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For those wise presentations, the Honorable John Waluke for 5 minutes.
5. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me a chance also to contribute on this, although there's no much time. Honorable Speaker, the President of this country meant well for the 4 issues that he wrote to the Speaker of the National Assembly for us to discuss about. Mr. Speaker, one is NGCDF. Honorable Speaker, we get little money, Mr. Speaker, as a constituency, even you as our Speaker. It's only about 131 million shillings. Compared, like where I come from, my county, Mr. Speaker, my county governor gets 12 billion. But, Mr. Speaker, you cannot compare. It is like day and night. The work that is seen in the counties, Honorable Speaker, is quite different. You can see maybe one project in a year, while you can get more than 20-something projects that has been done by that little money, including paying fees, bursaries for our children, Mr. Speaker. Like in my constituency, I'm paying for 5,000 children, Mr. Speaker, all the money that I was given. So, Mr. Speaker, the Senate should be given money, and enough money, Mr. Speaker, for oversight. We want the Senate to oversight this money, to see where this money go to, what does the money to from the county, because all the billions are synced somewhere, Mr. Speaker, and the money is not seen. Mr. Speaker, the other one is about women of this country. Mr. Speaker, girls should be given money. Our female MPs are equally like us. So their money should not be delaying. The way it has been delaying, they should be given money. We want to see what they are also doing with their money, because they have cried for long that the money delays. So when our money comes, Mr. Speaker, we want to see our women also get that money so that we compete in our county to do development. Honorable Speaker, we need to be very careful with the Constitution. You have been here, Honorable Speaker, I know, with me 3 terms. You remember the 11th Parliament and 12th Parliament. We passed very bad laws. One is the security bill, and the other one was finance. And, Mr. Speaker, it came from, let's say, the retired president. But later on, Mr. Speaker, we have seen and blamed ourselves that the laws that we passed at that time, Mr. Speaker, was not good. So our president has requested for us to amend and insert, and it is a test to us as members of parliament, Mr. Speaker, to go through those requests. If there is one that is not suiting us, Mr. Speaker, we will not pass it. But if they are all good, we are going to pass them, Mr. Speaker, because if they are good for the country, why not? Mr. Speaker, members of parliament in this house, some, I cannot say all members, but some get excited when they see a bill or a motion without reading it carefully, they get excitement. But we need to tell them that read and understand very well, so that you get excited when you pass either a bill or a motion. So it is up to us, all of us, Mr. Speaker, as a house together.
Thank you very much, Honorable Waluke. The MP for Banisa, Honorable Kuluasan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, at the inception, I want to thank the people of Banisa for giving me a second term. Mr. Speaker, this is due to the fact that I had initiated wide range of transformation in Banisa, including roads, water sector, police housing, airstrip, and etc. And I will ensure that I will work for the people of Banisa this second term and ensure that they get their democratic dividend. Mr. Speaker, on the debate that is before us, I would like to support the memorandum presented by the President. And Mr. Speaker, allow me to quote from The Riches of the Earth, a book written by Frank Fanon, and this, he said, each generation must out of relative obscurity establish its mission, fulfill it or betray it. And it is in fulfilling this mission that Honorable His Excellency, Mr. RUTO, initiated this memorandum. Mr. Speaker, one of the items in the memorandum is the leader of opposition. Mr. Speaker, every country which has good democracy must have a leader of opposition. And leader of opposition is there to establish shadow cabinet, shadow ministers, come up with alternative policies to that of the government. And this is because of this, it is important as a country we have a leader of opposition. And Mr. Speaker, today our leader of opposition is automatic. Is the person is the leader of the second majority leader, and it is none other than Raila Amolo Odinga. Mr. Speaker, I want to say this of Raila Amolo Odinga, and allow me to paraphrase from the Rivonia trial of Nelson Mandela in respect to Raila Odinga, a man of good standing, a senior citizen in this country. And this is what Mandela said, which is reference I'm making to Raila. During his lifetime, Mr. Raila Amolo Odinga has dedicated himself to the struggle of the Kenyan people. He has fought against the Kalenjin domination. He has fought against the Kikuyu domination. He has cherished the ideal of democracy and free society
in which all Kenyans live together in harmony and equal opportunity, an ideal for which he is prepared to live and to achieve, and an ideal for which he is prepared to die. It is with these befitting words I want the office of the opposition to be given to our respectable leader, Raila Omolo Odinga, and therefore I support President Ruto's initiative for the creation of office of the opposition leader. The second item, Mr. Speaker, is the question of to third.
Order, Honorable Hassan. Honorable Hassan, how many minutes will you have? You'll have 6 minutes when the debate will continue on this motion from tomorrow.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Speaker.
So be keen on the order paper, because when it starts, Parliament will start with you.
Thank
Honorable
you.
members, the time being 3 minutes past 7:03 p.m., this House stands adjourned until tomorrow, Thursday, 16th February 2023 at 2:30 p.m.
Good morning to you, and you're right on time for the National Assembly live proceedings. This being a morning sitting of the National Assembly on the 15th day of February, the year is 2023, a sitting that usually takes place at 9:30. The House resumed its normal sittings yesterday afternoon after a long recess and after concurrence of the members to be sitting in the House Business Committee, a crucial committee for the legislative agenda under the 13th Parliament. Today, the House commences its business with about 4 procedural motions kick-starting the order of business today. And these particular motions are on the limitation of debates on bills sponsored by parties or committees. Another procedural motion, another motion that will be moved by the Leader of Majority, is limiting the debate on individuals' bills, as well as limiting the debate on motions, and finally, limiting the debate of the report of the Audit Committee. These are 4 procedural motions that will be moved by the Leader of Majority this morning. After that, the House will be considering the Lands Amendment Bill, this being originally from the National Assembly, Bill number 40 of the year 2022, and this particular bill is by Honorable Simon Kingara, and this bill seeks to amend the Lands Act number 6 of 2012 in order to provide that where public land has been allocated to a public body or public institution, the National Lands Commission, for a public purpose, or where land set aside by persons or land buying companies, and this is for purpose, the Register of Lands under the Land Registration Act of 2012 shall issue a certificate of title in the name of the public body, public institution, as well as relevant ministry, as the case may be, as it is presently public land as well as land set aside for the public purpose by the land buying companies continue to be grabbed by private persons, primarily because there exists no certificates that are issued in respect to such land. The bill seeks to provide for the registration of public land. Another bill that is set to be tabled or read for the first time before the floor of the House this morning is the Pensions Amendment Bill. This is bill by Honorable Didmas Baraza, bill number 44 of the year 2022. And this particular bill seeks to remedy the delays experienced in the payment of pension to pensioners upon maturity of pensions. The bill also seeks to amend Pensions Act Cap 189 to provide for a timeline within which pension shall be payable to a particular officer. After tabling of those two bills that will be read for the first time before the floor this morning, the House will move on to consider a motion by the Leader of Majority, and this particular motion is on the general debate on the proposal to Parliament to consider amending the Constitution and its standing orders. And this particular motion is to pave way or to allow for cabinet secretaries to appear before Parliament to answer questions that are concerned when it comes to various ministries. This particular motion in detail says that, noting that the contents of a memoranda submitted to Parliament by His Excellency the President, asking Parliament to consider initiating amendments to the Constitution, and acknowledging that actualization of the proposals which relate to the composition of Parliament as provided in Articles 97 and 98 of the Constitution in order to attain the two-thirds gender principle and the creation of the office of the Leader of Official Opposition in Parliament, and the inclusion of various funds in the Constitution would necessitate the amendment to the Constitution while restructuring of parliamentary oversight. And this is to allow for cabinet secretaries to appear before houses of parliament to respond to questions by members, and would require the amendment of standing orders, and further acknowledging that the Speaker via a notification issued on the 9th of December 2022 refer to the matters raised in the memoranda to the Departmental Committee on Matters Justice and Legal Affairs with regards to proposals relating to the implementation of the two-thirds gender principle and the establishment of the office of the Leader of Official Opposition, the Joint Parliamentary Ad hoc Committee with regard to the proposals to amend the Constitution, and this is to also entrench the constituency development and the Senate oversight, as well as national government affirmative action funds into the Constitution, the procedure, as well as the House Rules Committee with regards to proposals to amend the standing orders, and this is to strengthen the parliamentary oversight of the executive so as to facilitate public participation, and this is pursuant to Article 118 of the Constitution, and now therefore pursuant to the provisions of Article 1 subsection 2 as well as Articles 95 subsection 2 of the Constitution. The House notes and considers as well as makes general comments on the proposals contained in the memoranda by His Excellency the President. The business of the National Assembly is just about to commence any moment from now. It is 4 minutes past 9:30 when the House is supposed